welcome back to the Conquest Corner. On this particular episode, we are going to be taking the potentially long and hopefully not arduous, but long process of going through and talking about Weaver Quartz. So I was giving an exam earlier today, so I spent a couple hours going through the different units, taking a look at all of it, trying to put lists together and all. And so we're going to go through all that now. Now, I will say, obviously, this is, even though I looked at it earlier, I've looked at it before, this is sort of a quite early first take sort of pass, especially when we look at lists. I usually try to make one list when a new faction comes out. I try to make a list related to like what will you have. So you have a starter box, and then what other things do you throw in to at least kind of fill it out? Because if you just go starter boxes, that's usually doesn't get you that far. And then try a different list of other things. I will say in this, obviously, with any of them, you kind of need to get them to the board, to the table to get a better feel. Everything else relies as theory, and I go back and forth on which seasons actually do as good and some of the talk. And I know there's still some stuff up in the air of exactly how certain things are going to work or how they might work or what people are thinking because I haven't tried it out yet and all of that. So set goal of this is we're going to go through the Weaver Quartz. My anticipation is to go through most of it or all of it. You will be able to tell by the title if we had to split this into two. I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to take. I do want to talk about everything. And I did try to think of different ways to put it. I was going to do it by seasons and things like that. The problem is a good amount of the units just follow whatever the warlord is, which means that I have to kind of just talk about them separate. So rather than splitting it that way, especially right now where, let's face it, technically nothing is out, but a lot of them are still, we don't have the picture of kind of thing, which is often the units that if they alter, get those alterations. So we're going to go through this, but I'm going to kind of do it just in the way they have it here in the army listing. Keep in mind, if you want to pick up any of these weavers or whatever else for this game that you want to, we do have a discount code, Terrain Kickers. It's beneath in the YouTube show notes. There's a link you can click on, saves you 10%, helps out the show as well. That link is technically different now. I think either link, the previous one, I believe should still work as well. They actually did update it when they updated the web store, so I'm just going to be putting that one in from now on. All right, well, without much further ado, let's start taking a look at the weavers. One other thing I'll mention that if you're actively watching instead of just listening, if you're actively watching, you're going to see is that on the right side of the screen, I have the pronunciation guide. On my screen, because I have an ultra-wide monitor, on my screen, I have a pronunciation guide open as well. Now, even with a pronunciation guide, I am not going to sit here and say that I'm going to say all the names correctly or anything like that, but I'm going to try to pronounce them the way that they are supposed to be pronounced, or at least closer than the way I just read them, which I don't necessarily do a great job of anyway. So we're going to try to read them in the way that they say in essentially their Irish Gaelic sort of look, which I know Gaelic is actually supposed to be a very, very tough language to learn. So, all right. So they start with the general stuff of how to put an army together, everything like that, and the way that the rules work. So we actually get to the weavers themselves. Okay, so weavers come in quartz. They have spring, summer, autumn, winter. So they go through the seasons. And those words are used throughout this book. And if they say winter, we know what that means. It references winter stuff. It means court of winter, all of that. First things first is that all the regiments get forest walk, so you ignore hindering zonal terrain, or the special rule to ignore the effect, which essentially means no inspired, no impacts. So you can go stand in a forest. Your opponent would have penalties coming to you, and you don't have penalties going to them. In general, so at least the tables I play on, we do put at least 2 to even sometimes up to 4 forests on there. There usually is quite a few, because that's also just a terrain feature that we have a good amount of. We try to put a few impassable, nothing too much, good amount of forest, and then, broken or, mostly like broken or some other stuff like that. The other thing, do realize certain things like forests are hindering and obscuring. Some other stuff might just be hindering, but this means you can stay in the forest. You could charge out, no concerns whatsoever. So a very useful rule to have. All right, so cycle of the seasons. What it really boils down to is that the seasons cycle around. Whatever your warlord is, that's what you're going to start with round 1. And then you're going to follow the order of the actual seasons, essentially spring, summer, autumn, winter, and then back around again. Key is friendly regiments of the same seasonal court as the warlord get one more to their march during a round that is that season. And there is some ways to manipulate this as well. But essentially, hey, when it matches, that you get +1 to your move. +1 on your march, and notice is the characteristic. That does mean rather than the march roll, or sorry, the march action, that does mean that you'll be charging further, moving further, all those sorts of things. I said there is some ways to help game some of this as well, because you do have several things that essentially match all of them, which means they will match the warlord for those particular rounds, where some other things essentially just won't match. Okay, this says, depending on the season a round is currently at, certain rules, abilities, or regiments, particularly those with seasonal court battlefield roles that match the round's season, get benefits. So a lot of pieces have rules of, depending on what the season is, you get these different sort of bonuses. So, and they mention in here that yes, you do want to vary up your seasons in terms of the forces you take. You don't want to take all of one, because that really means about every 4 rounds, theoretically, is when they get their bonuses. So you do want to vary this up. I was finding for my purposes, I mean, when I was putting it together, I might technically have all 4, but I try to get a strong supply of about 2. I do sprinkle in the others, especially depending on the unit. If there's a certain unit I want, I'll put them in no matter what. One of the heavy cav units is Winter, I believe, if I remember correctly. Where are they on my pronunciation list? It's the Gemrand Knights, but it's Givra, so the Givra Knights. Because I'm pretty sure they're winter, and I think they're super good. Rampant Growth. Everything you have benefits from Rampant Growth, although the prevalent thought right now is that when the character and the regiment do something together, be it Clash or Volley, even though they both benefit, you're only still putting down 1 token because it's the overall group that's doing it. That very well might change, but if so, I think that might be a little bit too much. But essentially, hey, if you get a single hit, if you get a single hit, regardless of if you get a wound or not, so succeed at least on hitting, you get to put a seed marker on that unit. So target someone, put a hit on them, put a seed marker down. Any regiments can have up to 2 seed markers. And there's a few different things that you can do with these seed markers. One of the main ones is that when the cycle of seasons progresses, naturally, that occurs at the start of the round. So essentially in Supremacy phase, you go to the next season. When that cycling happens, if you have 2 seed markers on you, you get a bloom effect. Essentially, it spreads. So you're looking for, I don't know why I'm yawning so much. I do apologize for that. I don't feel tired. Maybe I am. Maybe I created too much and looked at too many both good and bad scores. But essentially, if you got 2 seed markers on you at the start of a round, that you're going to get a bloom effect. And that bloom effect is going to match what that round's essentially is. So if you're going into spring, you get the spring effect, summer, autumn, winter. All right, so spring, if it's on your opponent. When they're determining charge distance, they roll 2d6, grab the lowest. If you get to reroll, you have to reroll both. You cannot just choose one. Depending on exactly the position of your opponent, this could be very strong. If they're close enough where it's essentially an auto charge, it doesn't necessarily matter. Although, even if it's a 2-up or even theoretically a 3-up, you're rolling 2 dice, they're having to pick the lowest. You actually are lowering the odds they make it potentially by quite a bit. I mean, how many times have we rolled with Unstoppable and you get to do a reroll and you did a 1 into something else and hopefully not a 1? And notice, the second part, that rerolling charge rolls, they're talking about Unstoppable. So if you fail them, the lower of the 2 dice, you have to reroll the whole thing with Unstoppable. But depending on where your opponent's sitting, this means that if I know I'm going in, if I'm the opponent, I know, we're going to spring like next round. He's got these markers, 1 or maybe getting to the 2 seed markers on some of these units, or I know he's still doing a few more things, or they are. because this unit's going next round is when they're going to want to charge in, not this round. But I do have these seed markers, or he's set up well to put more seed markers on me, which means maybe when I had before, hey, I had a reroll like 3 up, 4 up, feel good about that. Maybe I have to get closer because I don't want to fail it and be stuck out and not do anything. So spring, very, very strong. And these are things to keep in mind. We're going to have to keep referencing back to this. I probably should have put this up here as well. Summer's Heat. When a friendly regiment does a charge action against the enemy, roll 2d6, take ties. So more reliability on your charges, much less reliability on theirs. It doesn't mention about the reroll having to reroll both. If you have a reroll, actually, I don't think they have any banners. Then that's why they didn't put it. Actually, I just thought of that now. Going through this, I don't think there's banners. So you don't have that way to get unstoppable. There is unstoppable in a few spots. Specifically, now again, there's going to be some awkward pauses because I have to go back, look at the name, go through it, make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. The Gvra, those knights, they have unstoppable. So something useful to think of. There is some ways to get it. But I would assume you have to reroll the whole thing then as well. I mean, you'd want to, so that we have more chances of high numbers. Arms Harvest. When a friendly regiment performs a charge action against the enemy's regiment that has that harvest on it, remember these tokens, these effects are going on the enemy, you get Shock. Shock is a flat +1 to your clash, and Shock does not have the inspiration problem of inspiration cannot make you more than a 4. So this doesn't do that to you. This can put you to the 4 and the 5 and stuff like that. And specifically, there's at least one unit that we'll talk about that is naturally a 4. If they get the shock, they go to a 5. If they're then inspired, they're re-rolling those 6s. So quite strong. All of them are very good, depending on what you're doing at that particular time. In winter, friendly regiments currently in contact with this regiment gain the Dread special rule. This was the one I was originally the most excited for, and now less, but maybe it's because I just haven't tried it out yet. The reason why less is the friendly regiment has to already be in contact with it. So if I'm about to go into winter, I need to make sure my units are engaging theirs if we're going to essentially get this bloom effect, because otherwise nothing happens, because it's the friendly regiment that's in contact with that enemy gets dread. As it's worded now, maybe there's a different way this is intended, but the way that I read this is essentially when I'm touching the unit, I transfer this rule of dread to myself, and now I have that rule. The way they talk could also be that you have to stay in contact. Probably the intention, at least as worded. But that means if your hoping was they're going to have, essentially they were going to supply you dread and then charge into them, doesn't work, at least at the way it's worded right now. So we'll see. Of these, I would say for this army, autumn or spring are the best. There's a decent number of times that clashes aren't the super high numbers. And the army in general, again, certain things buck this trend. But I would say, so I keep pausing when I'm going to yawn. I don't know why. But I would say in general, the army doesn't have high survivability, especially after I just went through Dweg, where everything's sitting on like 4s or 3s and 4s, good high numbers. Your defenses in general are between 2s and 3s. Your evades are often like 0 or 1 type numbers. Yes, you do have a couple things that get to 4. You have some things that are defensive. But in general, you don't stand up to the hit that great, at least not that I've seen. Which means making it less likely your opponent actually reaches you, all the more important. All right, so that is the base rules for them. And then they explain them a bit, which is always very helpful. Especially with this, with a brand new faction. And hey, that pronunciation guide. So keep it handy. Absolutely keep it handy. All right, so let's get into some Supremacy abilities. I go back and forth on the way I want to do this. So you don't necessarily know all the units yet, but I think discussing the Supremacies here, just to get an idea of what sorts of things they can do, because a lot of them are actually very similar, will help us when we look at the units and the characters as well. All right, so pronunciation guide here. So the Morsi, or pronounced essentially Orshi, Reaper's Bloom. The always active is essentially the same for all of them. What that always active is hey, this particular character is autumn. So, hey, they can treat the bloom as autumn no matter what season it is. And hey, notice the Runesi has the same exact idea, but it's related to spring. So essentially, when your opponent blooms, I can work with it as the court that my warlord is. Second ability, hey, until the end of the round, everyone who's autumn, both regiments and characters, count the round season to be autumn. So you get to pretend whatever season it is the season that matches your warlord. Same exact idea for the Runesi, although that's related to spring. Those are the two that follow that. When we take a look at the others, now we get some differences. So, where is my pronunciation in this? I gotta get used to finding the thing. There's TLAOK. Makes sense. The TLAOK. All regiments that enter the battlefield, and it belongs to the same court as the season the round currently is in, gains Vanguard 3. So you don't have to match the warlord in this case. You just have to match the correct round. You figure for this game, pretty much everything's coming in the first 4 rounds. Really, maybe 1, 2, and 3 is probably most of the things. So you're going to start on what your warlord is. He is actually one who has a choice. And so we'll get to him, but he has a choice. But depending on which unit you're taking, round 2 or 3, whenever I think I will get the most of my, say, mediums or anything like that, I can make sure it matches the correct thing. And if it does, then hey, 1, you get the Vanguard 3. And if it matches the warlord in that particular round, you actually have move +1. So if you time this correctly, you could have your march characteristic go up +1. Do 2 marches with a vanguard. Now you get some real distances. In addition, when friendly regiment under the effects of planning an ambush, which is essentially an ability has, applies any seed markers to an enemy regiment, the seed markers immediately bloom as if it was the same season as the court warlords belong to. So whatever his season is. For what you can do with those planting an ambush, you can give some bonuses to shooting stuff. You can give bonuses to your current skirmishers. And there is a third bonus as well. Let's pull his up real fast because it makes the most sense to talk about him correctly. Here it is. So Crypsis, hey, if someone's going to volley at you, gain Tenacious 1 if you're in obscuring terrain. Track Prey, hey, your current skirmishers get Arcing Fire. And Force Bloom, when they apply a seed marker, that already has one on it, the seed marker on it immediately blooms. So if I put a seed marker on someone who had one, bloom immediately. All right, so now we can go back to the rest of that warlord ability, supremacy ability. That, yeah, it just says, hey, when they apply any seed markers using that rule, they immediately bloom. So the third effect, not quite as important there, but the first 2 really are. So if your goal is to get more of these bloom effects, if you're really trying to work with that, this character is a very strong warlord choice because you essentially can get them to go off for your warlord's type immediately. So yeah, so any seed markers, the seed markers immediately bloom. Okay. And then Shanahashi, at the end of the round's victory phase, you can remove all seed markers from anyone within 16 and then put them anywhere you want. So it's at the victory phase. We know at the beginning of the next phase or the next round is when they'll bloom and opponents get negative effects or some potential other stuff, which means now you can just stack it to where you want. There's some back and forth on whether or not this character, how this character feels, because it's a caster and it doesn't really have good casting values, although there's some ways for it to up it. But I think especially early on, that's a pretty good warlord ability because it just means I've been putting out these tokens. I'm not close to getting the effects on anyone. A lot of people have ones. Just rearrange it. Give a bunch of them 2s. Not as many, of course, but get some 2s out there. Get some bloom effects. Get what your army is supposed to be having. Remember, if you're not actually doing these sort of things, you're not doing well because the army is supposed to do this. And then activated, so essentially once per game, you can choose to skip ahead to the season of your choice when progressing through the cycle. So you can just pick the season you want, although it skip ahead to the season of your choice. I'm curious, I don't know this for sure. Can I pick the season I'm in right now? So if I'm in autumn, can I choose autumn? Can I technically skip all the way around? I don't know. But leaving that open for the moment, because also let's say, no matter what we think of it for the moment, that very well could change, especially once these units are out or characters are out. But you can just make it a thing that you want, and you can make sure when you're doing that, that you're getting those blooms on whatever it is that you want. So I would say Warlord abilities or Supremacy abilities, all pretty strong. You have two of them that are very similar in they help the correct way for their court. You have some Vanguard and you can get more bloom effects. And the last one, the Shanahas-shi, essentially can make sure that it's going off on the units that you want. I don't really have a ranking of them right now. I think it's way too early to think of that. But I will say that the two on this page are the ones that I am leaning towards. And really the reason I'm leaning towards them is because of sort of builds and things I'm thinking. I'm playing into using an army rule consistently. And I like that. Because like I said, for the other two, it releases certain courts. I'm not sure. I don't know which courts I really, really like. None of them are necessarily bad, but I don't know exactly which courts I want. All right, let's start taking a look at some units. All right, first character is the Warshi. So for the Warshi, it's pronunciations are so weird. So this is pronounced Warshi. 100 points. That's pretty much the standard. I think every character is exactly 100 points. Oh, it's actually the characters when we talk about the upgrades, so we'll get to those. So infantry, low volley doesn't really matter. Clash 3, 6 attacks, 5 wounds, 4 resolve, 2 evade, 2 defense. The defense type stats, and that counts as evade as well, but the defensive stats in this army tend to not be very good. Cleave 1, Quicksilver Strike. I don't want any of these dueling, but at least this way, if I'm going to be forced into a duel, because there is some ways to get forced, at least I have Quicksilver Strike, so I'm hitting first with Cleave 1, 6 attacks, maybe I can get something through before something bad happens to me. For rules, for what it does, Herald of Everdusk, during the autumn round, because this is an autumn roll, let's see, Court of Autumn. So hey, during an autumn round, this character gets Flawless Strikes. So if you're going to be challenging or having to be forced into that, do it on the turn when it's autumn, because Flawless Strikes. In addition, when the regiment this character is currently attached to is in contact with any regiment under the effect of Autumn's Harvest, you get an extra attack. So again, if you can time it correctly, and we talked about there's certain ways to do that. If this is your warlord, you can always bloom people like it's autumn, which means that you can always get an extra attack on your unit. Or if, say, someone else is your warlord, the Shanahashi, well, that one you can skip to the one you want. Oh, I got a bunch of tokens on you. Essentially, these growth markers, hey, will bloom and we'll make sure that we're autumn in that turn. Okay, so decent as a character for sure. Getting what it does, it wants you to put it in a close combat unit, and as we're going to see when we get to the other one in a second, wants to be an ranged unit. I'm not going to go through and discuss all the things they take. In general, most of them take almost most things. There's about 1 or 2 units that get locked in little spots. Okay, let's take a look at the Runesi. Again, 100 points. They're all 100 points. Volley 3, Clash 2. This is the one that has barrage and rapid fire and all that. Aim shots naturally. So essentially volleying on 4s. So this is your ranged character. 5 attacks, 5 wounds. Resolve 4, 2s and 2s. All right. Like I said, this one is spring instead. There was a pause there because one thing I just did was open another part on my screen to list the different bloom effects because they matter. I don't want to get them wrong. So the spring one, that was your opponent rolls 2 dice, takes the lowest on charges. So during the spring round, when this regiment is currently attached to applies a seed marker to an enemy regiment, you may immediately remove all seed markers from that enemy and apply them to enemies within 8 inches, to all the enemies within 8. So as it says, guided pollination, you can essentially send it out. And remember, subtle sow was essentially, hey, your spring, pretend like everything is spring and do spring stuff. And the spring effect is a strong one. So the Rune Sea is just base the way I look at it, a good warlord choice because the ability that you're getting is going to help you survive. Because notice, your saves aren't that great. And the resolve 4 is like one of the only spots that you actually see that. Most things are like 3s. There's even, I think, some 2s. I don't remember if that's correct, but I know there's a lot of 3s. And not nearly as much 4s as you might think. Okay. In addition, when the non-monster regiment this character is currently attached to performs a volley action against an enemy regiment that's under the effect of that spring growth, it has aim shots. So the character, the Rune Sea, always has aim shots, but you give it to a unit as well if essentially they have the spring's growth on them. A very useful sort of, not exactly a win more, but it gives you that economy. I've been using this for my Sorcerer Kings in Water. One of their spells gives you aimed, which means if I want to shoot you, at least now I get to do the movement first, because sometimes I want to get closer or potentially further away. And then, hey, they can all take a single gift of life binding, and takes, again, most of the units. If you do look through, you will see a little bit of differences. It's mostly what I've seen some of the infantry choices. Or the TLAOK. Volley 1's not shooting anyway, who cares? Flash 3, 4 attacks, 4 wounds, so very low wounds compared to the other ones. The other ones were usually a little bit hardier. There were like 5s? Yeah, like 5 wounds in all. Resolve 4, 2s and 2s. And this one actually gets to choose the court. Keep in mind, we're going to see later that a lot of units say, hey, your court matches the warlord. So you can tailor what do you want a reasonable amount of units to do. Do you want to make it where your opponent's charging worse? Do you want to make it where you're charging better with summer? Do you want it to be that you get shocked? So if you make the charge, you get better with the autumn. Or you plan to get stuck in, give them dread so they can't get those bonuses of inspire. So you can choose which court that you want. And then twice sown. When the regiment this character is currently attached to applies a seed marker, you can put 1 extra. So whatever unit you have this in one action, you can put 2 seed markers down. And then we talked about planning the ambush. Like I said, at the end of the Supremacy phase, you get to target 2 non-monster regiments that are within 12 inches, and you give them a benefit. And you may select the same benefit twice, 1 for each of those units. So we talked about, hey, if I'm in obscuring terrain and you're going to shoot me, I get Tenacious 1. Arcing Fire for those current skirmishers. And then Force Blossom. When a target friendly regiment applies a seed marker to any regiment that already has a seed marker, it immediately blooms. So you already have 1 marker. I hit you, you bloom immediately. Keep in mind, they only last for the round, but this way I can help tailor when I get the effects. And again, takes most stuff. And then you get restricted options depending on what you bring. So you'll notice certain things are missing. You will get them as restricted depending on this. Myrmidons, I think it's one of the few ways to actually get Myrmidons. So like if you want Myrmidons, that's the only way to get them. So be aware. There's ways to get some of these other units. Yes, I know there's way, because Gemra Knights. Let me look at the pronunciation. Gevra Knights. I know there's ways to get characters on them, and this is a character that can't go on them. We'll talk about why in a moment. Alright. Shanahasasi. So, again, 100 points. They're all flat 100. Volley 2, Clash 2. It's got 4 attacks and 5 wounds. Resolve 3, 2s and 2s for its defense and evade. So, they don't take hits. Try to avoid that happening. This one is Summer or Winter. This is your caster, base 5, but it can get extra dice. And depending on the court you pick, is the spells that you get. So Arcane Harvest. Hey, if you're going to do spellcasting action, you can remove up to 3 seed markers from any regiment within 12. Every time you remove one, you count as 1 additional success. So if you just base want something to go off like a buff, you could spend 2 seed markers and guarantee it works, because then you'll have at least the 2 that you need. And then should the Shanahashi remove seeds from multiple enemy regiments, you have to remove them all from one first. So you can't have a whole bunch sitting on 2s and pick one off of each. Personally, since this is the only caster, the lists I'm building do have this character in there. They have the Shanahashi. And I'm probably, at least for a little bit, going to do that because magic is strong. You know, having a wizard for interference is useful as well. And it feels really good. The 5 dice doesn't, but at least I can take some markers off to maybe even just bump myself to a 6. Feels good. 5 doesn't. And then notice, depending on which one you take, you get some options as well. So those Gevra Knights, the Gemrend Gevra Knights, if you're winter, much like we saw for the TLAOK. I would keep looking off the side, pausing for a moment, finding it, reading it. I will get them sooner or later, but it's going to take a while. All right, so that gives us the characters. It's hard to judge the characters just on the outset. Like I said, the first 2 characters are very similar. They just change which, essentially, one is range, one is shooting. Sorry, one is range, one is close combat. And you're changing which of the courts that you care about, what season matters the most to you. But otherwise, they're very similar. The TLAOK, that one is especially very nice because it does something a little bit different. You can get extra seed markers to get those abilities off. You can assign rules to units. So especially when we're taking a look at the Karen archers, they don't really have any rules. Okay, here's a way to get them some rules. They can at least get, say, arcing fire and all. All right, so that's a little bit about the characters. Like I said, I would say the first 2 are a little bit crapshoot which ones you take. And the caster, if you want spells, you're doing not the best, but I think you kind of do need spells personally. All right, so let's get on to the gifts. All right, so when we look at the upgrades, I would say a few look pretty good and many look pretty bad, and they're all expensive. The cheapest ones are 20s, and pretty much they're mostly 30s. So Ambush gives your character forward force. I don't think it's worth it. Not for 30 points. I can wait around. If I really want that character, I'll just choose him as my auto. I don't want to spend 30 points on that personally. Drake Rider. It can only go on one of the Runesi or the Wersea. Or Warsea. But hey, they can hop on a Coil Drake. I believe it's pronounced Coil. Yeah, Coil, I guess Draga. I guess for dragon, but Coil Dragon. And hey, it gets some extra barrage, and its barrage gets better range. One thing you're going to notice, or maybe you did, is all the characters are infantry base. And there's 4 infantry regiments out of all the regiments. There's a good amount of cav, a good amount of brutes, several monsters or monster type things, and then you only have 4 cav, which means you need things for your characters to go on. I will say one thing I was running into issues on Wisp building is since there's only so many infantry, there's only like 4 of them. Oh, okay. Well, which ones do I want to include? Oh, I want these other units. I have to take the infantry. I need at least an infantry to put this character in and all. So for 30 points, and you can take it more than once if you want, then hey, they can at least hop on a monster. Gives you some good utility. Okay. For the Gevra Lord. So Gemrend or Gevra Lord. Sorry, I'm just going to move a little bit. Reposition myself a little bit here. Has to be Court of Winter, which essentially means it cannot be the War or the Rune, but the other 2 have options to be Winter. I believe they both can be Winter. Yep, there it is. Possibility Winter. Just making sure. All of this is new. There's going to be mistakes, and that's fine. We'll all figure it out together. Essentially, you now get on a horse, or whatever this thing is going to look like. But yeah, it's giving you extra wounds, impacts, brutal, harden, trample. It's giving you tons of rules. 30 points is absolutely worth it. If you take a look at, say, 100 Kingdoms, their on-horse characters are more than the foot. They are the 110 to 130 sort of range. This one almost feels, depending on what you want to run, it's sort of auto-include, because you don't want to have to take all the various infantry necessarily, in my mind, and because some of those infantry aren't available. So there's 4 total. Most characters don't have all 4. They only have a few. And the one they all definitely have for sure is the Kern. I don't want to put my guys all in lights. So this is a way for them to go around with a nice heavy unit. Reinvigoration for 30 points. Once per round, as the sea markers have bloomed, select one enemy regiment with a bloom effect on it. All friendly regiments within 12 inches will heal 2. I did put that one list, didn't put it in the other. I do think that's a very strong effect. Being able to heal, especially in army, as you're going to see, that is generally a little bit more glass cannon-like. Not everything, but I would say overall, they are not the most survivable. So a little bit of healing helps. Although, for 30 points, depending on what's happening, if your opponent is hitting your 3-stack of whatever, especially, like your infantry type units or even some of your brutes, they might not be there anyway. So a decent upgrade, but not amazing. At least not in my mind yet. We'll see. The voice is silence for 30 points active. So, hey, before the start of the round Supremcy phase, you can choose not to progress cycle season and go through the same season again. So you pick the time to do it, stay in the same season. Very useful, but for 30 points, that's very, very expensive. I understand their idea because it gives you a very strong bonus, but I just think it's too much. Bond of Falcons. They get to ignore obscuring zonal terrain when performing volley actions. The regiment that they're in. For 20 points, maybe. I mean, realistically, if you're looking at the volleys, you're probably looking at current skirmishers. I don't think they're so amazing that I want to spend the extra points for that necessarily. But if you happen to have some spare points, if you got 20 left over, it's a spot to do it for sure. But again, it's okay. Rapid Blossoming. Always active. 20 points, always active. When the regiment, the character, is currently attached to applies the seed to the enemy unit, they immediately bloom. That's a pretty strong one. We saw that these bloom effects can do a lot for you. So just automatically getting to put a bloom onto someone, depending on, again, like I said, the round that you're in, your Kern are shooting during spring into a unit. And that's where I said your character is, oh, okay, automatically making them roll 2 dice, take the lowest for their charges. Or, oh, I want to charge in my next activation into this unit with someone else. Hey, summer or autumn, depending on which one you're sitting at. So upgrade wise, like I said, Drake Rider. I know it's probably not actually pronounced Drake. I'm sure it's probably Draga. I guess, yeah, Dragon, but I'm going to pronounce probably Drake, honestly. Very strong. Giver Lord, very strong because it lets you not be in your infantry because you're only infantry people. The other ones, there's definitely reasons to take them, but the ones at 30 points feel a bit tough. The ones at 20 feel a little bit better. All right, so that gives us our gifts of life binding. I will say when I built a list, one, I don't think I included any of them. The other one, I tried to put a few in. I will say I am the type, though, in general, I try to go less upgrades in the very beginning to get used to the units and what they do. Then I start adding in all of their extras once I'm more comfortable with exactly what it's doing for me. All right, but now we'll talk about some spells. Keep in mind, all of your spells currently are coming from the Shanahasi. It's the only thing that actually takes any of these spells. Just, there we go, fixing up that portrait a little bit. And you're choosing, essentially, as it puts it, summer or winter. We'll see if other people get more in the future, but this is essentially what we have. And it says, hey, when a court, and this is true for both of them, when that particular court of blank spell is successfully cast during that correct round. So summer spell during summer, winter spell during winter. In addition to the effects, you get a seed marker on the target. Or if you already got a seed marker, then it blooms. So you get to put a seed down. If it already has one, you can bloom. This does mean there's nice and easy ways to stack these sorts of things, because you could reverse the chain activation. I know it's not chain activating them, but essentially your unit go, do something to them, then the character go afterwards. You'll get to put a spell into them, and then you can have them bloom automatically. All right, so for summer, they got Disseminate. All their spells are exactly 12 inches. Most are attunement 3. This one's attunement 4. Hey, they got Spring's Growth or Summer's Heat. They immediately go into the effects of both. So if you have one of the two, you get the other one automatically. Keep in mind, those are the ones related to charging. Spring is bad for you charging. Summer is good for me charging. So you got one of those, I can guarantee you have both. You are much harder to charge, much easier for me to charge. Good spell in general. Especially on attunement 4, very likely to get it, even if you are close enough that you're getting interfered with. Dehydrate, it's 3 scaling, very important to notice. But hey, you just get -1 to your march. We saw that there's ways that you can get +1 on your marches in this unit, in this army, and giving them -1s, especially, again, if you have them with spring or even autumn, because then I'll get the charge and you won't because you're that much further away. So, good spell. Depending on the unit, very good spell. Timing can be tough. You do have to make sure you go before it does. And if it's a scary enough thing, they're probably going to try to put in the beginning. Heat Haze, again, 12 inches, attunement 3. Grant regiment with 2 seed markers on it. Till the end of the round, the enemy regiment cannot draw line of sight further than 8 inches away. Exceedingly strong. They do have to have the 2 seed markers. So you figure what you could have done. Previous round, put 1 marker on. This round, hit them with a Kern unit from range. They have 2 seed markers. You don't currently run any of the effects that auto pop them off. There is some of those effects, so be aware of those. But, well, okay, as long as because they have to have it in time for the cast, so that's what you'd have to be careful of timing-wise. But if that's the case, hey, they can't see further than 8 inches. So if you're able to do this with one of their shooting units, they're not really shooting anymore. At least no one that's not in their face. If you're looking at a unit that wants to charge, remember, you can only charge things that you actually have line of sight to. Which means if I stand outside of 9 inches, you'd have to move charge me. I'm much happier with you move charging me than charging and getting your swings as well. So Heat Haze, currently absolute #1 spell. Obfuscate, it's on 4s. Target enemy regiment with 2 seed markers apply to it, then they immediately bloom. They immediately apply seed marker to all enemy regiments within 8 of that particular one. So they have 2 seed markers, bloom them, and then spread out more tokens. Again, attunement 4, very easy to get off. Strong effect depends on exactly which season you're looking at and timing. What I will say, it's probably true in general, but pretty much most of these spells really, really want to go early. Where if you had like a heal spell, you could wait on that sort of thing. You want your opponent to do something to you first. If you were squared off in terms of sorry, let me think about that for a second. Okay, more of like regiment to regiment, you're already in combat. Some of these do worse, obviously, but you probably want your spells to go early. I find some other stuff, or, oh, I want them to move forward to get within range of me. No, a lot of these effects, if they've already gone, putting the spell on them isn't really doing me very much good per se, unless it's the correct season and I can put some more markers on them. Obfuscate, good. Doesn't beat Heat Haze, though. Propagate, it's on 3s. Target friendly regiment, any regiments currently in contact with it suffer the seasonal bloom effects of the same season as a target regiment's battlefield roll. So you will take the bloom depending on what I am. Where that helps the most is, say, if I'm a winter unit, then they now give me dread. So again, if I can go with that, they've engaged the was Gevra, the Gemrend, the Gevra Knights. They're winter. Those knights are stuck in. I give you dread. You cannot essentially inspire, and then you're swinging at me less effectively. Still, I don't think beats Heat Haze, but that's actually probably very strong for me. Maybe second. Disseminate's also very good. Dehydrate is more niche. A -1 matters, but depends on timing for sure. Obfuscate is good, but again, it sort of depends on timing. But Heat Haze, absolutely love. All right, let's take a look at Winter. Take the Armor Rhyme. Again, most of these are 12. One of them is 8, but all of them now are like 3. One is 4 with some scaling. Target enemy that has 2 seed markers on it. Until the end of the round, the regiment counts as moving through hindering terrain, and other enemy regiments cannot march or charge through it. This is especially good. Again, timing matters. You gotta get it early enough. But if they want to charge at you with like Crimson Tower or something like that, okay, they're going through hindering. They lose all their bonuses. What they care about is, impacting you and all of that. You lose all that. And other enemies not being able to go through them is very, very strong, or especially charge through them. That means you can take a look at, okay, they have their light unit towards the front. I put this spell on them. They can no longer use, what do you do with lights a lot of times? You use them to screen your other units. So my little light unit stands here. My other unit is behind, and they want to be the ones who move charge or just charge, depending on line of sight, those sort of things. Well, now you can't do that anymore if you put the spell on it. So you do need those 2 seed markers, so you have to plan it appropriately. That does at least make certain difficulties. Your first action couldn't be this spell because you need to get that other seed marker on it first, unless you have some other tricks up your sleeve. And I don't think there's any tricks that do that. But you could have it be your second thing. So the timing with this for some of these ones, the Bloom from Propagate didn't care. Heat Haze does. So it can't be the very first thing. But you can make it a second or a third thing. Dark of Winter, 3's scaling 12 inches. Target regiment with 2 seed markers. Again, they have to have 2 on there. Notice they spell it out in one spot, don't spell it out in the other. Till the end of the round, the enemy regiment cannot re-roll failed hit rolls or get inspired. Winter is all about what actual winter, at least here in Jersey, is all about. And that is just, crushing darkness. So Dark of Winter, yeah, if someone has flurry and all that, you can stop it all. Again, they do have to have 2 seed markers, so you kind of have to plan it appropriately, and you have to make sure that it's not the unit that they must activate first. Because if they had 2 seed markers before, they would have went off, and it would have germinated, essentially. Halcyon Days is 8 inches. It's the only one that's not 12-inch range. Target obscuring piece of zonal terrain till the end of the round. When an enemy regiment begins its activation or moves through this piece of zonal terrain, they get blooming seed markers. Depending on how many objectives you have in the game, and if you can get close enough to do this, this can be very useful. And I'm not as impressed. I guess if they were looking at like some move charges and I can put some spring on them. Again, winter really wouldn't do much. Autumn, if I know they're just going to go stand on that objective, then at least now I can do more to them. Not overly impressed with Halcyon Days. Moldering Bloom. The enemy regiment is under the effects of winter or frost. Hey, you get both. So just like they had the one for summer and spring, these 2 together. So I can get shock and you would have dread against you. Be aware though, at least with the way winter is written right now, you already have to be in combat for that to count. Which, if that's the case, I guess that would help for other units, but we'll have to see. Maybe that's not their intention. Seed of Winter. All stands in the target regiment get -1 to the resolve for each seed currently on them. So up to a -2, but min resolve 1. Depending on the army you're going against, there's some armies with some good resolves, especially when you consider unit size or characters, where they're getting to 4s and sometimes 5s. If you happen to put seed markers on them, 1 or even 2, hey, then you're just minused. Now you're easier to get into. Notice things they don't have. They don't have any damaging spells. So they're not going to hurt you with their spells. They have to hurt you with the rest of it. So these are much more utility pieces. When we're taking a look at winter. The Armor of Rim just essentially making it where they're not going to get their bonuses on charging and they can't come over the top of their units might be the strongest. Although Moldering Bloom does work quite well as well. And lowering someone's resolve, that depends. If someone's resolve is already garbage, minusing a little bit more won't do anything. And Old Dominion and a couple other units exist where you can't lower it anyway. But that gives us the spells. I said they're not damaging spells. They don't hurt anyone with their spells, but they do have good utility. Me personally, I forget which I took in both of them, but I kind of like the Heat Haze as the spell overall because stopping you from being able to see me, since the ability to have 3 actions in this game is so unbelievably limited now. That means if I want to do an earnest, charge and swing, then I want to probably be reasonably close. If my move is a 5 or a 6, then I was probably looking at 8 or maybe a little bit more. You could also cast this on them, have your unit then go and step back a little bit, if that's the sort of thing. So if my goal wasn't to charge you, but I want to try not to get hit by you, I could actually back up. I would say that one probably the strongest there. This one I might take might take the armor. Again, it's not super survivable army base, at least what I see. So anything that gives me advantage there, absolutely worthwhile. All right. That puts us to the units. And at this point, you might see a little bit of a change because this part might get recorded in the morning instead. All right, let's take a look at least a few units before I call it a night, and then we pick it back up in the morning. Current skirmishers, 110 points, 40 a stand. These are your light, very basic shooting units. Move 6, so good speed, volley 2. Pretty classic. Defense 2, evade 1 with a resolve of 2. So not survivable, but they're your archers. That's not too surprising. 16 inches is a good range. Barrage 4, pretty decent. They have the season of your warlord. So depending on what you pick, depends on what you get there. And the big thing is that their upgrade, the stalker upgrade, means if they've already shot a unit, then anyone else who shoots at that unit gets reroll 6s. If you're taking several bits of shooting, then adding that upgrade is a very safe 15 points to do. Some other people get some reroll 6s. Otherwise, this is one of your very few infantry units. You only have a couple lights as well. This is your infantry light. It's a spot your shooting character could go if you want. That was the Runesi, I believe, was the shooting one. But if not, they're cheap, and the starter box has 2 units of them. So you're going to take some. At least in the beginning, I would. Not even just because they're good or bad, but I have them. And also because at the end of the day, yes, they're going to do some damage. What I'm probably more concerned about, or what I want from them, is to put a C marker down. And there's some ways, depending on what you take, where that C marker could be 2. Or the C marker could bloom immediately. All sort of effects. So they will put some damage, but they're going to be your long range, 16 inches away, to put C markers on people. All right, other things in that starter box. Just check and pronounce this, Kron. Apparently that's pronounced with a W there. Kron Guardians. These guys actually look really good. I think they look really, really great. These are another ones. Hey, they're the regiment. Well, this one actually I should say a little bit different. The regiment counts as belonging to the same seasonal court as the current season. So whatever season is, they count for that. So they can more readily or more easily potentially have some bonuses and all. Keep in mind that +1 to March only happens when you match your warlord in the correct round. All right, they're naturally move 6, got a clash of 2, so pretty low level clash. 5 attacks, 6 wounds, 3s and 3s with no evade. Low evade is very, very common here. They got Vanguard 3, so you can get up, 15 inches of the board when you come in as your medium. Got some impact. They have a shield, so they're really defense 4. They have Relentless Blows and Unstoppable. And then they have Rooted Might. So in or out of combat, choose one of the following effects. If it matches the Warlord season, you get both effects. So put seed tokens on every enemy within 10 inches. Very strong because you could get to 2, and we do know there's some ways to auto send those off. or get your relentless blows on ones and twos. As someone who plays Ifrit Sword Dancers, getting your relentless blows on ones and twos is really what makes relentless blows good. Yes, your 5 attacks each with a leader, so essentially looking at 16 attacks for a three block at 190, 60 points per extra. On ones, you expect to get a couple. On ones and twos, you will get a whole lot more, and you're actually going to get something through. Because notice, yeah, they have some impact, but their clash isn't really that good. They don't have any ways that they cause additional damages beyond just getting some more hits with those relentless blows. But they are defense 3 with a shield, so if you're going against an opponent that doesn't have cleave, or even has just a cleave 1, this is a unit that can potentially put some damage into them and will hold up okay. Not greatest, but will hold up okay. So, one, I love the model. Two, I do think they have a pretty good spot. At the points they're sitting at, this is a pretty good unit to go sit near the front of an objective. If someone gets close, you rush off to cause them problems. All right, we have the different on moths or butterflies. Absolutely love them. So, sorry, I'm just looking. There they are. Sikan riders. So like cicada, I guess, Sikan riders. 150 points, 70 points extra per stand. More expensive than the other ones because those ones are only 50 per stand. But hey, they're cav, medium, which means if you want to put one of those Warsea or the Runesea characters in there, you're going to need to take that 30-point upgrade. But move 7, volley clashes both on 2s, 5 attacks, 5 wounds, resolve 3, 2s and 2s. You're not very survivable on defense in this army, I will say. You fly and you got fluid formation. So as long as you don't get wider than a 3 or end wider than a 3, rotate any way you want. You get the same court as your warlord. Nice and simple. So for special rules for what they do for us, because notice they don't get anything extra off of that. Revitalize the draw event. Till the end of the round, the regiment's bombing run special rule changes as follows. So here's the base bombing run. And then we'll talk about that special one. Base bombing run is once per round. You select one enemy regiment that you moved over while performing a march. You will inflict X hits, where X is the number of number stands in this regiment, plus 2 additional for each seed marker. Maximum of 8 hits on that, and then the additional. So you just can run over people and get some auto hits. These hits originate from the flank, and they don't cause morale. But then you remove the seed markers. I understand why they do that, especially because if you had multiple of these, you just could run over enemies multiple times. But it is sort of a shame because you have to decide if that's what you really want. And you do select one regiment that they moved over, so I guess you kind of have to if you go over someone. But that revitalize, that stronger one, is, hey, instead you could select a friendly regiment while performing this march. And they'll heal 3 wounds. In addition, 2 more wounds if the current season is the regiment's seasonal court. So if they're on the right season. So you could either have this be a damaging thing onto your opponent or a helpful thing to you. That's about it for 150. Because it gives you a way to get some healing, and there's a few other little spots of healing, we saw that, and we'll see a few more later. Since this army in general, for what I see, is a bit squishier, being able to heal 3 back, that's a stand. Not full wound stand, but you're getting a stand back, especially if you're not partially injured on some other stand. I'd like them. I will have to say that bombing run, though, I'd have to try it out more in practice because it does sound decent depending on the size of the unit. But I guess you don't want to take more than 3, but at 70 points extra for 4, now I'm at what, like 220 to be able to do 4 hits plus 2 per C marker, maybe up to 8 hits. I guess that would be useful. Really, probably what that's most useful is if I'm in position to move charge and I can rush forward into an enemy and then I passed over someone else. So that way I can hit them with some attacks as I walk by and then hit charge into this other opponent. But again, your close combat is not the most amazing. So you do have this extra ability. I'm not sure. I'm not sold on them. I'm sold on the models. Not necessarily sold on the ability. All right. I gotta look up how to do this one. Kianir. So Kianir Riders is the 150 first stand. This is your shooting unit. They're volleys too, but they get aim shots. So essentially they're gonna be shooting on threes. With 3 shots at 12 inches. They got fly, fluid formation. They're opportunists. They have Pathfinder. They're 5 wounds, resolve 3, 2 twos. All that stays the same. The 4 attacks, the clash 2. So, what? 1 less attack, but the same as that clash. And these guys didn't really have an offensive, we make our fighting better. They bomb people, sure. They're the same court as the Warlord. And hey, like I said, Pathfinders, whatever reinforcement line they set doesn't get pushed back. From medium with 7, that's okay, but then that means they're coming in turn 2. I'm hoping then to utilize it. I mean, if all you are is about, if your back end is only like 12 or so inches up the board, not to necessarily get you that much further, maybe a bit, but not too much to come in from the back edge, I find. But if you have something come in, say, turn 4, now you could actually be very, very far up. And sowing shots. When the regiment applies a C marker on an enemy by performing a volley action on its side or rear, notice they have opportunists, so they're trying to rush around to the sides. Immediately apply a C marker to another enemy regiment within 8 inches. So this to me is the sort of unit where you're not trying to engage early. You are trying to get around to the side, get around to weaker parts, maybe fly, since you fly over the opponent once their stuff is in, and just pepper them from the back. And then you can toss out some extra seed markers and all. 3 shots at 12. If you play it right, I think they can be good. But if you misplay it, then they're probably not doing that much. But I do like them as overall. I think I like them. I don't know. I think maybe I like them a little bit more than the other option, just because from range, I can start getting marker seed tokens on you to get the effects I want to line up all the rest of it that I need. So the Kianir are probably the ones I like more. Either way, the models are really cool, I have to say, for this. All right, new day, we're still at it. There will be potentially some timed pauses because I'm currently helping my wife make some breads. So when the timer goes off, I got to at least pause this and do that. So you might hear a single beep. I'll try to grab before that happens. All right, will-o'-wisps. So we're taking a look at one of the other light regiment choices. There's a couple in this army. So these are Brutes 100 points, 40 extra points per stand, which sounds really high for the fact that you're only 100 points. So 40 per stand sounds maybe a little much. Their move 6, volley and clash are both 1, so they're not really doing much. They don't shoot, but essentially not really clashing. They have 4 attacks on 5 wounds, which is pretty good actually for a light. A lot of lights are only on the 4, so on the 5s is nice. But 2s across the board for resolve, defense, and evade. Which, okay, those sort of defensive stats are not out of the ordinary for a light, and especially light being a brute. Loose formation, lethal demise 2, and irregular. The lethal demise 2 hurts. I understand why they might not want to go to 5, because that was causing some of the problems for lethal demise in general. And in this, actually, your healing across the board is much lower. You don't have like a big heal spell. You do have, like you saw, we looked at that one piece of essentially equipment or war gear that does a heal, but only it's a heal 2, so you're not going to be able to get one of these back. So I would have liked to see it be lethal demise 3, maybe even a 4, get something, especially because they're on Clash 1. So not really attacking, but let's see why you would bother taking them. 1, your friendly regiments can draw a line of sight through them. They have that Storm Cloud, so they could be blocking to help protect your shooting regiments while still being able to engage fully. And then, and we've seen these. They've actually shown the models. They're okay. A lot of the other stuff I like, but these ones I'm not too keen on personally for the moment. And Harbinger of Seasons. When a friendly regiment performs a volley action against an enemy regiment, should you draw line of sight through this regiment, existing C markers on the target regiment immediately boom as if it was the same season as a regiment's seasonal cord. So your Karen skirmishers are shooting through your will-o'-wisps into your opponent. If they have existing seed marker. So they already have a seed marker on them. Then that seed marker will go off based off wherever the Cairns Skirmishers seasonal court is. Keep in mind, a lot of your shooting units are, I think, pretty much every shooting unit, because there's a lot of details in some of this. I believe every single shooting unit matches the Warlord ability, doesn't come with its own season. So they could be a reasonably cheap at 100 points, a rather cheap speed bump. They could be something that you also, since you can shoot through, you could be more tactical about it and keep the two very close together, your shooting unit and this, so that way you can have someone else put a seed marker and then get immediate effects. Again, depends on which. Hey, harder to charge could be good. People charge at it easier. It could be very useful. So you don't necessarily have to do, like, my thought, you don't necessarily have to do like some of us do with our throwaway style unit, the speed bump unit, of pushing it all the way forward. This one could actually sit right in front of your archers. If your archers are in a good spot, sit right in front of them and then just be peppering the opponent. And again, that peppering, you're not necessarily even doing for tons of damage. You're mostly just doing to get these effects on it. And here's a good way to do it. Problem is, your main shooting, at least that they're coming out with now, is light. So it's not like you can even sit on the objective, have these sit right in front and just block you for a while. You do have at least the one riders. There it is. The Kinanir riders, who has some shooting, because they at least can score as well. Although they could see over you before anyway because of their size. No, actually they couldn't, because those were brutes. My apologies. So actually, yeah, that's potentially an option. I think Willis are fine, but you're paying their points for that effect, and I'm not yet sure how effective that will be, because I don't know how much shooting I'm going to run. I am going to run some, of course, but I don't know if I'm going to get quite enough. Maybe it's helped by the fact that they are brutes, so they will block your brute units from shooting at something behind mine because they're big enough. We'll see. Not bad. I'm not sure how much I truly like them. But I also don't run, personally, I don't tend to run tons of lights either. All right, for the next one. So apparently SCOTH is pronounced sky. So Skydrock, or dragon, essentially. 230 points. Here's your first monster heavy. They have 3 monsters, one of them being a bunch of models put together Voltron style. All right, so move 7, volley 2, doesn't matter, doesn't shoot. Clash of 3, it's got 12 attacks sitting on 18 wounds. Resolve of 4, pretty common for monsters, but defense 3, at least the evade is 2, so at least it'll always have some part of a save on that. Naturally has cleave 1, it flies, has some impact 5 with a terrifying 1, gets flawless strikes and an opportunist. So again, this thing wants to get to people's flanks and into their sides and things like that. Because it flies, at least it has a little bit of a better shot of doing that for the Skydrug. Move 7, that's enough. I will say, as I've been playing some more monsters lately, when I play my not survivable monsters or my not pure wrecking destruction type monsters, I've been seeing it with my Sorcerer King's Trinovartas, that giving up that turn so you can get to a good position matters. And with flying, at least you don't have to worry about where they're currently standing. So you actually have a better shot at getting that opportunist. It is Court of Spring, so it's going to be caring about, so if it's the right timing, can get a little bit more, but keep in mind, now for you it's been theoretically quick, but for me it's been a little bit, so just want to pull it up to make sure we remember exactly how this works. Friendly regiments of the same seasonal court as the Warlord will get once of their march during the round that's the same season as them. So you're only going to get that extra if your Warlord is also Spring. So essentially it triggers at the right time. But it might, depending on the units you want to be able to get further, this could be a reason to put yourself at Spring. You do have some choice with a Taoiseach, I should say. And was it the Worst of the Runes Sea? I think one of them was Spring. I don't want to scroll back up for the current moment. So you could get him to 8. 8 will help a lot clearing units. All right. Defying Flight. The regiment and other friendly regiments crowed with an 8 gain untouchable against enemy volley actions until the end of that action. So you get to reroll your 6s either here or anyone else within 8 inches is getting shot at. Useful, especially early when you're trying to get yourself set up. Echo Whispers. Once per round, when any regiment with an 8 has its seed markers bloom, so that could be at the top of a round, or we showed there's various ways to get to occur mid-round and all. We saw the Will-O-Wisp a second ago that let you do that. It will heal 3 wounds. And if it's spring, heal 5 instead. So you're 18 wounds, but if you can be putting some seed markers down on the opponent you're on, so easily this thing could go in, attack something. If it's not destroyed, shoot it with, say, your current skirmishers or your Canarnier, but shoot it. Then the next round, hey, you get heal 3 or maybe even heal 5. That helps, especially, like I said, it has some defense, but you chew through 18 wounds. It's not as big of a number as it might sound. Avatar Nature. When enemy regiment inflicts wounds on this regiment as a result of a clash or charge action and any morale tests, and additional wounds have been resolved. So if you heard this, go through the full process. Once that's done, any seed markers on the enemy regiment immediately bloom. The seed bloom even if this regiment is destroyed. So if you take it out, they still bloom. But after you've hurt this thing, when it's all said and done, bloom right then. So, as well as clash or charge action. So the way I would read that, if you charged and did damage on the charge, and any additional, I would say then you get to bloom, and then would be the clash, because it doesn't say clash and charge action, or showing that it's after both. Essentially, if you've hurt it in close combat, it'll bloom those seeds. So this is especially useful if it got to go, well, I guess for the charge part, if it went to first, it wouldn't help. But if you already have a seed on it, someone charges in, especially if it's a winter, you can put dread on them. Some of those wouldn't matter too much. The charge part doesn't matter at that point, or someone else charging them, but probably winter might be then the best time for it. So it can, and if it goes first, you're automatically going to put a seed when you attack. And then when they swing back, it'll go off. Unfortunately, at that point, depending on which season it is, it might be a little bit too late. Although that also helps because, hey, then you could immediately heal. So if they don't take you out, you do get a heal. And Terraform, when the regiment is destroyed, do not remove its stand from the battlefield. Till the end of the game, it's an obscuring, hindering, and traversable piece of zonal terrain. Enemy regiments that go over it have a seed applied. Remember, you have ways to ignore hindering, and, well, I mean, traversable is fine. Obscuring could still affect you, but so be it. Okay, this is the one with the flower face, I'm pretty sure. There's 2 of them. One has more of a dragon head. One of them has a flower for its face. So, for the Sky Drive. The other one can be ridden, so I kind of like that just a little bit more, but I do like the versatility this one brings in. This is not necessarily going to be the centerpiece that's pushing into the middle of the enemy line. To me, this is probably much more of wanting to go up the side, hit someone either in their flank for opportunities if you can get it, or even if not, take out some of those sort of side choices and then start pushing your way in. Since it has some innate healing, you just want to avoid anything that could try to one-shot this. Because, yeah, your Avatar of Nature rule could still go off and you'll make some terrain, but I really want this thing around for a while doing something good. The fact that at least has cleave 1 on those 12 attacks means that if it's not, and flawless strikes, if I'm going against something that's not the heaviest target, I can get something good. Terrifying 1, which helps. So I would probably trying to, at least in the moment, think about putting this thing towards the outside since it flies, cross over things that you don't want to deal with. And if they want to rotate and hit you, so be it. Then you can fight them on your own terms. But otherwise, essentially go down the sides, try to peel your way in, or try to catch their very fast movers that are getting away from you. Okay, so Coil Drake. Yeah, looks like it's pronounced Coil, or close to. I'm going to call it Coil Drake. Or I know it's Drake. Draga. So Coil Draga. 230 points, so they were identical. Okay, always nice. Move 7 as well. Volley 2, but this one actually does shoot, but it has aim shot, so it's really going to be sitting on 3s all the time. Same amount of attack, same clash, same wounds, same stats otherwise. It does have a 9 shots at 8 inches with armor piercing 1, so it does have to get pretty close. Keep in mind, if someone is on top of this thing, you do get some extra shots and you get some extra range. I think it's 2 extra shots, 2 extra range. Cleave 1, fly with 6 impact. So actually has more impact. Yeah, but this one is apparently not terrifying. Okay. It is the same court as the season and the cycle. The other one was as well. I believe, no, the other one was spring. My apologies. The other one is absolutely spring. This one is whatever the season currently is. Okay. For breath, when you perform a volley action, excluding any attached character, so the character doesn't get this rule if you're going to volley with it, it performs it multiple times, once for each enemy regiment in its front arc, and within that 9 to 8 inch or potentially 10 inch range. You target the front arc, targeting each enemy regiment in its front arc and barrage only once. The regiment still does a single volley for that. So you can just shoot everyone that you have range and line of sight to. You're shooting out the front, which is fine. You wouldn't necessarily be allowed to shoot out the side anyway. And your character doesn't get the extra shots, but you do. Depending on where you put this thing, that could actually be pretty good. Because 9 shots at AP 1, always on 3s because you're always aimed, that's enough to potentially take a couple wounds off. Or even pop a stand if you're hitting things with, say, 4 wounds or partially injured. You could legitimately be removing a stand from multiple units. Especially with that character on for the extra 30 points. Putting a character on this, it'll lengthen the distance, ups the number of shots, and the character does at least get to shoot. I would say the character still shoots once. I don't, probably maybe whatever your first target is. You'd have to declare it ahead of time. But yeah, it performs it multiple times. So I would say your character still gets to shoot once if your character shoots. But even if not, put a character that doesn't shoot on there. That's fine. You only have 2 characters that can go in it anyway, the War Sea and the Rune Sea. So actually quite good. I really like that. This regiment will perform a volley action while in contact with that regiment, but if that's the case, it can only shoot the enemy it's engaged with. So that would override the breath, because then you can only fire at the ones that you're engaged with. So if someone's already on you, you get that. Devouring Molder. Okay, just want to see if I had more rules. Some of these are between pages. I wanted to have the name visible as well. Devouring Molder, once per round, when the regiment destroys an enemy regiment, it heals 2 wounds for every C marker that was on that regiment. So here's one that doesn't want to send them off. It naturally can't make them bloom, unlike the other dragon that we took a look at. But this one does want you to have it because it also now has its own sort of healing ability. Sorry, I always keep looking off because I have to go back to how to pronounce it and try to get used to this and try to get good at this. And it's going to be a long time. So the Sky Draga. So for the Coil Draga, of the 2, I mean, the fact he's still Cleave 1, yes, he's not terrifying. He loses the Opportunist. I don't know how easy that is going to be get off. The fact that the other one doesn't have Fluid Formation does make it tough to actually get that ability to work. Because if you're just overshooting the opponent, you might not be faced well. When you think of things that have Opportunists now or do that sort of role very well, when you think of Nords, the Fenwolves and stuff like that, they're good at it because they could rush to the side, reform, then charge in. And they got that free reform. If you have to spend it for part of it, you're not getting nearly as much out. Now, it doesn't get a free additional volley, so it may shoot multiple times, but doesn't get free additional. So this thing is probably, at least to some extent, you probably flying it to a spot, maybe trying to get it towards objective, hopefully something in front so it doesn't get charged. But then shooting a whole bunch of units, you could then charge into someone to get some impact into them, following around. If you need to, shoot them. Otherwise, you could just attack them. Whether or not you inspire is probably up in the air, depends on how injured they are. And hey, if you destroy them, then you can get some heals on. And especially keep in mind, if you've done attacks on them, they're getting seed markers, destroy them. Hey, now you get some heals, and then you continue on your way. Knowing the fact that you can get a little more distance and a little bit more attacks, of the two, for what I'm seeing for this army, I think the Coila is better, at least for what I want, than the Sky. I just think this one, you have, for the Sky, you need to make certain things happen, and I'm not sure how easy that's going to be. Now, I haven't played the army yet. And let's face it, until you play it, you don't get a good feel for it. So maybe with other particular things out there, this will be easier. But I think this is the sort of unit that, when I look at some of the others, knowing survivability on some of these units, if I was the enemy, I don't mind being turned a bit to the side to be prepared for this, to stop your flying dragon, because you don't have that like big hulking thing waiting down the middle per se. You have some options of that, but I'm not sure if I see that all the time. Both are good. They both do a little different. And this one, the Sky heals easier, but I'm kind of liking the Coil more. Just that's me personally. All right, Myrmidons. Myrmidon. One thing I will say, we didn't go through and talk about who takes every such thing, but some of these are much more limited with who can actually take them. And if memory serves, I think Myrmidons were one of the ones that were a bit more limited. Yeah, because they're your medium infantry. But I remember when I took a look at it. So your Runci takes Myrmidons, but restricted. So you have to take some of the others. So you could put a Runci in there. Your War C does not take Myrmidons. A lot of these have a lot of options, but not all of them. Taoisi does not take Myrmidons. And your Shanasi does not either. So it's only your Runci. So if you want these, they're the only way to get them. For your Runci, that was the spring. Okay, that was the spring character. It's a lot of little things. What I'm going to do when I test them out, I'm also going to print off a whole bunch of markers for the different seasons to remember who is what, especially because some of them go off of the Warlord, all of that, just to try to make my life easier until I get a better grasp of it. I would say on the off, currently, just the overall look, this is not a new player-friendly army, although it looks very cool. But in the beginning, you probably just play whatever and then start building out to really make your seasons work for you. So if you're taking that Runci and you want to take any of these guys as restricted, so you have essentially max 2 in the army right now. 180 points for the group of 3, 60 more stand. They are medium infantry. You essentially have like 4 infantry choices. Current skirmishers are decent. They're light, but they're decent. They fit their job well. One of your other ones, I'm not sure if it's actually good at all. Like, I can't decide, or if I got throw enough stuff at it to make it good. And then Myrmidons, so this is only really a spot for your Runci. Move 5, Clash is sitting at 2. It doesn't matter, its volley doesn't shoot. 4 attacks, 4 wounds, 4 resolve. It's got 3 defense, at least has an evade of 1. They are cleave 1. They are untouchable, so naturally getting those rerolls is going to help you out quite a bit. They have Iron Discipline, and they have a support of 2. All right. For Iron Discipline, I have to look that up. I always forget which one is which. All right, looked it up because none of the armies I play actually have the rule. Sorry, it's been a few minutes, so I have to get back into the flow, even though for you it's been a quarter of a second. Iron Discipline is if you get hit in the side or rear and you have that rule, don't lose support and don't reroll successful morales. So let's take a look at the coordinated ranks. Enemy regiments don't get reroll, fail to hit rolls when making attacks. Nor can their attacks generate additional hits in the front arc. So can't reroll the hit, and you don't get anything extra. So all the rules, most of the ones I can think of are shooting based, or I'm thinking like relentless blows and stuff like that. If you're in the front arc, you don't get any of that. Okay, they don't have shields. That's what I was checking. During a spring round, the regiment gets relentless blows. That's fine. Your base only 4 attacks. This isn't a unit, especially Clash 2 on 4 attacks. Really, I'm not looking at them in terms, I guess, with the cleave part to be able to deal damage, but they're not really big damage dealers. Maybe they're just able to keep up with the thing that's hitting them. Here's the big downside to them, pariahs. If you read a little of their fluff, it makes sense why they sort of have this. You don't get to apply seed markers with what you do. So your attacks don't apply any. So when we compare them to the current skirmishers, because remember, all of your characters naturally go in infantry blocks, although you can take 30-point upgrades to put them in some other spots, depending on which one in particular. Two of them, the war and the rune, can both go into on a dragon essentially, and the other ones you could buy to make them a cav unit, but otherwise you're going into combat units. But again, for this one, it's only the rune C that can do it. So you could put them in here. If you're worried about your character getting destroyed, this is, of those options, probably the best one. Yeah, you're only 4 wounds, but at least your defense 3. At least you're untouchable, so you're getting some rerolls. You actually have some evade, because a lot of this stuff doesn't. And the opponent's not getting anything extra when they fight you. You are spring, so if you can get a winter to go off on that enemy, then they couldn't be inspired, and they get no rerolls. They lose essentially a lot of their bonus type stuff. So you could stand up to it. Cleave 1 on your clash with potential on certain rounds being relentless means if you do time it right, they can at least dish out some damage. I would say if they're not getting the relentless, you're probably not doing that much unless you're taking a big unit and you're already 180 points. I don't really want to take a whole lot more. I want to get to 240 for 4 stands because I don't think that's getting me a whole lot. Plus, even then, I'd probably be stacking them as a 4-pack kind of thing, or a 3 then a 2 with the character in there. And your characters aren't super fighty. So if you take a look back at the rune real fast, and I do realize this one's a little bit more haphazard than maybe some other ones, but since they're a new faction, we're kind of talking through them and discussing my thought process on these. So when we take a look at this guy, yeah, he's 5 attacks on 2s, and he's the shooting one. And that's a unit that doesn't shoot. And during a spring round, when the regiment the character is attached to applies a seed marker, yeah, they don't. And hey, when they do a follow, he gets, no, they don't. So he's the only character that can go in it. And in reality, they are diametrically opposed for what they want to do. Which means this unit is essentially on their own. Which means your character, unless you put them on something else, isn't necessarily the most protected. I could see a 3-pack. I would run them 2 and 1 probably to give myself a smaller frontage, especially if the opponent might be coming out with some really big frontage units or trying to hit you with multiple units. And their goal is to sit on an objective, maybe a mid-boardish objective, and charge in the right round. Maybe go wide, charge in when I'm about to hit spring, get the relentless, so that way I can actually get some decent damage dealt out. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm as we look through this, I just feel they're probably a little bit overcosted for what I'm seeing that they do. You know, there's plenty of enemies who don't get the bonus of the coordinated ranks. It's not that everything that's hitting you is getting all of this. If they had an inbuilt dread, that's another story. Because now, essentially, you have to slog your way through them. Good. Or if they were 3, but also had a shield. Okay, you hit them in the front, you're kind of, it's rough for you. But you hit them somewhere else, maybe you can get a lot done. But they just feel too expensive to me personally. It's not a good option for the character. All right, so let's get to the next one. This is the Skaha Hunters. I'm really glad they gave this pronunciation guide. When I play this, I'm gonna have to have it sitting next to me, I'm sure, or tape it to the back of a model. So the Skaha Hunters, 170 points, 60 extra per stand. This is infantry. So who actually takes these ones in particular? Because I've noticed sometimes with this infantry, like I said, there's not tons of it overall. So hunters, so the Warcy could take it as restricted. So it could go with your combat character. Decently combat, actually. That particular character is decent combat. Does not take the hunters for the Runci. So no. Is it just going to end up being the Warcy? No. And looking at the last character, looking at the Shanahasi, does not take the hunters either. Okay, so you're only going in your combat character. Let's remember exactly what that character does. Oh, sorry, there they are. Morrissey, so some cleave 1, gets a swing first, decent number of attacks. Character can get some bonus, and the unit could get extra attacks if it's under the effects of Autumn's Harvest. So you hit them correctly, either because it's autumn and they bloom, or shooting through and you're in autumn, or there's some other ways to do it. But if you do get it to go right, you could get some extra attacks. So having said that, now let's actually take a look at what they can do if you want to put a character in there. Move 6, Clash 3. The volley doesn't matter. 5 attacks, they're sitting on 4 wounds, 3 resolve, but 2 defense, 2 evade. Notice, it's sort of a Nord's fashion. A lot of this stuff isn't being able to stand up to the hit. They do have deadly blades, though. So very useful rule to have base. And on 5 attacks, so you have a few more attacks. So more likely that they're going to roll those 6s. You are Pathfinder, so you're setting that good reinforcement line that can't get pushed back. Although you're medium, so unless they're in turn 2 and something gets delayed till turn 4, it really won't matter. Opportunist, so if you can get to the side, you get some rerolls. That's really going to help out. And loose formation, so a bit harder to shoot into. They're autumn, just like the character. Mimesis. Enemy regiments cannot draw line of sight to this regiment through a piece of obscuring zonal terrain. In addition, enemy regiments under the effects of seasonal bloom outside inches of this regiment cannot draw a line of sight to them. You're not survivable in terms of your stats. You're survivable in terms of being able to stop the enemy from targeting you. So if you have a nice big forest somewhere that will obscure, you can see through it. They will not see you. And it does say see through, so if you're standing on it, I would interpret that they could see it. But keep in mind, you're not affected by hindering, because forests are usually obscuring and hindering. So you can just go straight through. Or if they're bloomed, they just can't see outside of 8 inches. With Opportunists, this gives you the way to potentially get the people sides, because you could be standing off to the side. They actually don't see you, so maybe they have a charge lane to you, but they don't actually see you because you're just sitting at 8.5 inches, which that really doesn't need much on a charge. Then you're looking at like a 3-up. Although, notice there's not banners in this, so essentially unstoppable doesn't happen much in this army. But you can have a really good shot at that and then charge into their flank. Their only option might be to rotate. And then, even if they rotate, even if they were to reform, they're not going to get closer. Most likely not realistically going to get that much closer. Probably maybe still don't see you. They could just at least keep you from getting the Opportunist. And the Might of Evertusk. When the regiment performs a charge action against an enemy regiment under the effects of Autumn's Harvest, you get 2 extra inches. Keep in mind for Autumn's Harvest, sorry, I have it in all these notes over there, that's when you get shock. So when you charge them, get shock. So, much like an actual hunter who needs to time and stalk and prepare appropriately, that's what this unit wants to do. At 1/7, so if we can compare it to the other one, in a way, yes, less survivable if someone can get to you, but if you can be careful what you're doing, you get quite a bit. One, that means if you can get to the side and you can get the bloom effect on them, they won't see you. That +2 in charge makes you move 8. So now you're seeing an auto charge is sitting at like a 9 or just outside of that 8. They don't see me, I see you, or I'm standing on the other side of the terrain and they're not allowed to target unless they move onto and then move through. And if they're moving onto and through, they're not attacking, they're not getting their impacts most likely unless they get to cheat like Nords. So this is a unit I like. I like them as a little 3-stand. I wouldn't mind them getting a little bit bigger. I don't care about Pathfinders. I guess Opportunists might get a little bit harder if you get a little bit larger, but I think this is a nice spot for your character because your character is a fighty type character going to this unit so that way they can actually take some things down and peppering in, making sure you time it correct to be able to get the right piece off so you can have that autumn harvest. When we take a look at if he was your warlord, that's what I want to take a look at. Oh, where is he? There he is. If he was your warlord, okay, the regiment always keeps the bloom effect as autumn's harvest. Okay, that's fine. And all autumn regiments count the season to be autumn on the turn you want. So if you take a couple autumns, you could help get through with this. I do think this is an army that, to get the full advantage, really takes some planning of the when and how. These guys aren't bad in general. If you just pop them into someone, they will do damage. But if the person's very survivable, you're not going to care what you want. You really have to be able to, destroy them pretty well. Maybe not even just take them out right, but maybe harm them greatly. So that way if their other regiments are close by, they can't like charge into you and all because of essentially their own stuff blocking them and all. But if you're careful, like a hunter would be, I think this unit's actually really good. I really like what they do. You just have to be careful because they're not going to survive that great. But kind of used to that. Okay. We take a look at the next one, which is the Knights, Gevra. So the Gevra Knights, Gembrand it looks like, but Gevra Knights, 280, 80 points extra per stand. These guys I remember looking through it. I really like these guys. Remember, there is an upgrade that makes one of your characters like this. They have to be the right type. Winter's one of them. I think spring was the other. But you could, and that rule doesn't make you go into this unit. It just makes you cav. There is a few other cav options. Although, one thing I do want to check. Okay, so I was checking the Shanahasi. If you choose winter, can take them. And you have to, actually, my apologies, you have to be winter to take the upgrade that makes you a Gemra Knight. Or a Gemra. But they do have at least some other riders and all. So you don't have to go in there. There's at least some other choices. I know the Taosi can take them as well. So I wasn't having to check that one. All right, but these guys are move 6, clash 3, 5 attack, 7 wounds. So very high wounds for this. Resolve 4, defense 3 with evade 1. So good wounds, not super survivable per se, but decent survivability. They have cleave 1, they actually have unstoppable. One of the few spots you have it. And for Cav with impact 4, brutal impact, you want that. And they have Hearts of Ice. If it's a winter round, they lose Unstoppable and just gain Juggernaut. So instead of having to roll for it, they would charge for it 11 inches. That means you could sit at about 11 inches, depending on what your opponent's speed is. That's either a maybe 6 on the charge, or maybe like a 5, so hard for them to charge in. And if you time it correctly, you just automatically get in. Impact 4 with brutal impact. If you've timed things right, if that enemy has an Autumn's Harvest on them, because remember, there is ways to get the triggers on other pieces. But if they got an Autumn's Harvest, then you get shock, so you'd be on 4s, and then if you clash, on 4s rerolling 6s, I should say. This is something the army hasn't really had, at least that I've seen. This is something that wants to go out and get to them. A lot of the other stuff wants to be cagey about timing and all of that, even if it's not a winter round. There's nothing wrong with doing a move charge, especially if it's say autumn, where I can then hit you well, and then I'm still cleaved with a decent number of attacks and good wounds to stick around with. So I like Cav in general, so I think this is a very good unit. They have a few options of the characters that could go in it. I don't know if either of them really need it, because you also have to think about like your caster. I think in one of the lists, I think I did put my caster into this, because there is some very good spells that you want to get up close to do. But either way, I absolutely love this unit. All right, I gotta look back at my pronunciation guide. Skell. Okay, so Skell Dancers. 170 points, 50 per stand. They are a brute, so no one's going with them either way. Move 6, they have a clash of 3, 5 attacks, 4 wounds, which is super low for a brute, if it's not like a light brute. Resolve 3, but 2s and 2s for defense and evade. So yeah, the units that have evade have like 2, which is decent evade. But they're mostly then also on defense too. Or if you have a better defense, like a 3 or even sometimes a 4, you have like no evade. They're fly, they have loose formation, so several units in this army have that. Does make it, if you're going against a shooting type list, going to do a little bit better. Parry, so that's nice with Relentless Blows. Although Relentless Blows, when you naturally don't have a bonus, isn't nearly as good. So like Relentless Blows on my Bone Golems, I had to think about what they were called. On the Bone Golems is nice because, yeah, the Bone Golems are just about that amount of attack, so like 1 less. But they have cleave too. Okay, so everyone getting through is quality. These, you're not necessarily getting quality, so you're just hoping to roll tons and tons of ones. Though parry helps a bit as well. And fly, so you can avoid the things that you don't care about, at least a little bit better. Blazing Souls. During a summer round, because these guys are summer, during a summer round, the regiment gains the counterattack special rule till the end of the round. In addition, they get the counterattack special rule causes hits on modified defense rolls of 1 or 2 instead of the usual 1. So counterattack is essentially when I roll a 1 on defense, you take a hit back. Well, they do it on 1s and 2s. Yes. So essentially, if they defend, because their defense is only on 2s ever. So if I defend a shot, you take a hit back. I don't know. I like the sort of thing they do, but we're kind of seeing a consistent of they're going to need those other effects to potentially do something well. And when they get in, they're somewhat defensive. That, like I said, that parry helps. This Blazing Souls can help. But again, that's only in summer rounds, so they actually get that counterattack. So the other rounds, they're a evade 2, resolve 3, 4 wound model standing there. So survivability is not that great. Output is not that great. You know, I would see, hey, they got the less blows, they have this loose formation, so a little bit harder to get your damage into them as they're rushing in. But when they get in, I don't know if they're going to get the job done. So I'm up in the air about the scale. All right. Looking back on my pronunciation guide. Okay, Gallo. So Gallo Glass. I wasn't sure this one was different. Gallo Glass Warriors. 220 points, 80 extra per stand. These guys I absolutely love. And maybe that's just because it's my play style, and I have to try them out. Maybe when I try those scale dancers, maybe they'll be super good, but I actually have to try them. But for the Gallo Glass, these are heavy brute, so it's one of the first, other than the giant monsters, than the dragons, the first heavies. Your move 6, your base clash 4, so super, super good. Remember, keep in mind that at least currently, shock adds 1 to your clash characteristic. It's not like Inspire, where you can't go above. That could change at some point, though. 6 wounds, so a good amount of runes. Resolve 3 with a defense of 4, which is very good defense. No evade. If you're on defense 4, I'm okay with that. If someone comes at you with super high cleave, like a cleave 3, you aren't going to be good numbers anyway. So they have trample 3, fly, and they do impact. So this is a unit that wants to charge in, hit you, swing, and then stand there. This is a unit that actually, even though they're only 4 attacks base to start with, we'll talk to about it, they actually could get some extra done because they have the impact. They have that trample. They're the same chord as the Armor's Warlord. Mercy of the Reaper. It's a draw event. Remove the 3 seed markers from enemies within 12. The regiment gains cleave X, where X is the number of seeds removed. So if you have seed markers from the previous round, or if they're in a spot where you can wait a little bit and start throwing out some extra seed markers, they can slurp them up, and then they actually have the cleavage, which is what they're lacking. A unit like this that is really tanky, as we see, defense 4, that's pretty tanky. Resolve 3 is not so great, but I'd rather, the defense 3 there with 6 wounds, a nice tanky unit. Well, only 4 attacks base. Am I really getting that much extra? Well, hey, when you turn them to cleaving attacks, especially depending on what you're going against, if you can get to say about cleave 2, if it's a stronger, I'm looking about Twag and all that kind of stuff. Now you're actually carving into people. Here's the other really good part. Brute force. When you're going to clash someone, you compare the regiment's current clash characteristic with the target enemy regiment's clash characteristic. Which I said, keep in mind, if you had shock, you are up by that 1. And you do compare current. That also means if inspired happens, you are looking at that as well. For each point of clash greater, the regiment gets 1 extra attack until the end of the action. So if I'm in a position, even if I had to, actually they don't care about the hindering terrain. Even if you don't get the shock, you're on 4s, you're only 6s. Most opponent stuff isn't on 4s. Most opponents, even the good combat units, tend to be on 3s. It's rare to see other units sitting on 4s, which if they are on 3s, you're actually more 5 attacks. If you're hitting someone who's worse, if you're going against a unit that say is only naturally on 2s or something like that, or if you were able to get that shock, well, maybe now you're at 6 attacks instead. Maybe now you're at a +2 and all. So these guys are 4 if you're going to get someone just as good as you, but most people are not. So you're probably more likely about 5 attacks a pop. For your 5 attacks still on Clash 4, maybe rerolling 6s or maybe even better, you're getting almost all those hits through. And if you do need some cleave because of what the enemy does, you can stack that on. These guys are expensive, and rightly so. I think as a 3-pack, they're good. I'm kind of liking the look of maybe even a 4th just to get that one spare. Maybe not necessarily running 4 wide. Maybe I would try it just to do it, but maybe 3 with 1 behind. That way I have 6 ablative wounds ready to go so I can make sure this unit gets in and does something. But I think these guys are really, really good. It gives you something the army hasn't had yet, which is survivability and potentially really being able to smack into something that's hard to remove. Even overall, you haven't had tons of quantity of shots. So these guys are giving you the good quality that I don't think you've had in many, many places. And at least for the moment, looking at it, it's the only spot you're getting high cleave if you want it. And there's always times when you need it. Multiple armies I play have things that sit at cleave 3, and I'm really find it a hard time not ever bringing some of them because you find that, defense 3 shield, defense 2 rule shield type units that, yeah, I'd love to get to your side. I cannot. You protect yourself with monster that's defense 3 or 4, but evade 1. Well, I don't want you swinging back because you have these huge numbers. I have to try to take you down in 1. I need those values to do it. So with that trample and impact, I absolutely love these guys. Like I said, taking 3 for sure. Might try to take 2. And I think if memory serves, several people take them. I don't think they're super rare. So restricted for the Shanahasi. Oh, breads were done. I had to check as well. These guys, everyone takes them. They take them as restricted, but everyone takes them. So that means you can easily include a unit or honestly, potentially even 2, depending on what else you're bringing. Like, yes, they are points-wise expensive, but they're going to get a job done that I feel up to this point, the rest of your army doesn't really handle well. You do need something that stands and is able to take hits. As someone who plays Sorcerer Kings, I do find that problem of I can't take a hit well. I'm 3/3s and 1s on evades. These guys, at least that 3, that 4, unless someone has super great cleave, which for most things you weren't going to be on a great evade then anyway, unless they have super great cleave, they can stand up to it. 6 wounds, they'll stand up to that. And then depending on what they're going against, they're going to get some good swings back. So they not necessarily that they're on clue, but at least for my play style, I want them in there because they can stand on that front of that objective, hopefully take the hit, and then have enough left with their base number, their base clash, their attacks, all that stuff to be able to do something back to you. So absolutely love that. And actually, at this point, I might have to pause for a moment, go to work, and then come back and film the rest of this because I got about 30 minutes to go to work. I have to finish getting ready and also take the dog out. So in a moment, it'll probably be nighttime when you watch the next bit of this. All right, it is evening now. Got another wardroom change here, and we are going to try and get through the rest of the few units we have. I might tack the list onto this or a different one. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where we get to. All right, so we want to talk about the biggest thing in this army, the Wild Hunt. So 320 points, you're allowed 1 of these. And if you take this, then you can't take a little bit further down, and we'll talk about them as well. Yeah, the Avatars of the Hunt. Essentially, the Wild Hunt, so there's 4 Avatars of the Hunt, 1 per season. The Wild Hunt is all of them put together on a monster base in some way. We've been told that it is those 4 models. They all essentially Voltron together somehow. And yes, you can pull them apart to make this work. What all that will look like, who even knows? And one of the special edition was the what? The autumn one, I believe. I believe that's what the one is. All right, they said 320 points. So now most expensive model in the game? No, just about. I think one of the Tauntaurs is Tauntaur Drumbeast. I think is just about that as well. They got move 7, volley and clash 3 does do both. So that matters. 15 attacks, sitting on 22 wounds. So sitting at Tauntaur type levels. Resolve 4, defense 4, win the evade of 2. Especially on big monster, evade of 2 is always at least nice. It has 7 shots at 12 inch that counts as aimed, so it's hitting on 4s. Naturally cleave 2. So for 15 attacks, which if you're inspired on 4s, cleave 2 very good. It does fly. So see exactly what that looks like. Terrifying 1, of course. Brutal impact 8. Sorry. Impact 8 with brutal impact 2. So you, assuming, again, hindering terrain doesn't matter to you. So you'll have your impacts. You're looking at naturally, assuming you don't have the shock from autumn or anything like that, which you could. Let's assume you don't have that for a second. That's 8 on 3s, so about 4 at brutal 2. Then you have 15 more, probably on 4s, at effectively the same idea as brutal 2, because cleave 2 is the same. It counts as the season that currently is, which is very useful. It gets a free single volley action, so it can move. Notice, though, one thing it doesn't say is it cannot, as written right now, volley in close combat. So you could volley, charge in, then swing at someone. Has power of the voice. If a seed marker blooms within 8 inches, it blooms all the seasons. So they charge worse, you charge them better, you get shock, and if they're touching someone in combat, that unit gets dread. 8 inches for a monster base is a pretty good size for sure. Sorry, computer's making a little bit of noise, but I don't think this is picking it up. At least by the look of it, it's not. One of the fans, I think, is giving me some issues now. So on a monster base, you're talking, about a 4.5-inch base, 8 inches out from that. So you can potentially hit quite a few. And this is something that probably wants to be somewhat centerpieced to your army. The other rule has is the 4 harbingers. When it's part of the force, like I said, you can't take the wild hunters as officers. Instead, if you destroy this, you choose a friendly non-master regiment that doesn't have a character, and whatever season it is, that wild hunter goes in. So if it's spring, you take the one for spring and put it in that unit. Once destroyed, the wild hunter is destroyed with it. So yeah, so then essentially the hunters are all 60-point upgrades. So you're getting that 60-point upgrade effectively for free if, with, or when this thing goes down. So no idea what this is going to look like. A lot of these we don't necessarily know what they're going to look like. But it's well known that I like the giant monsters. This thing does feel really good. Has good shots, good attacks when it gets in as well. Doesn't get it gets the free volley, but not in combat, so you have to just time that a little bit. And we talk so much about which season do you want the blooms in, taking wisps to make sure that you can get the certain ones you want from your shooting and all that. Or if you have him, just be close. So one of my lists absolutely put him in, and the other list purposely didn't, so I could take some of the avatars. I don't think they would change him much looking at him. I know sometimes when they put a lot of points on something, they give a lot of rules, and sometimes they have to change it. It's probably because when it goes down, you get, and notice there's not a range on that. Just you choose another friendly, and they get that essentially the officer model. Because of that, 320 is probably fair. It's probably about where it should be. So, and hey, still flying, so still has some potential to go past the units it doesn't want to fight. Could potentially double move and still volley onto someone. All right, we went with great, and now let's go with, I don't know, I just can't decide if this is good or not. Let's go with the Blah Maidens. 130 points, 40 a stand. Their move 6, so pretty fast. Clash 2, 4 attacks, 4 wounds. Very typical infantry here. Typical infantry in general, though when you're thinking of fighting infantry, usually your clash is maybe a 3. 3s resolve, 3 defense, no evade. They're Vanguard 3, so they could be up 15 inches on the board when they come in on that potentially turn 2 or 3. Or 4, I guess, if you're rolling really bad. They have the same seasonal court as the current season. And that happens because depending on what the season is, they get different rules. So during spring, they're going to heal 6 wounds. Very good, although you're only 4 wounds a pop. So if you've broken, you can't heal. So you do have to consider that. Because 6 wounds is enough to get, essentially, at least a stand back, heal a stand, get a stand back, or even potentially put 2 stands back if you were fully healthy at whatever level of stands you were. You could get 1 extra attack in summer. You can get flurry in autumn, or you can get an extra defense in winter. Okay, they're nice because they always get something. That is useful. You don't necessarily have so much control on what you get, although we do know there's at least some warlord stuff that can keep it, or items that keep you in a certain season and all of that. So yes, they do have that sort of ability. The problem I find with them is a lot of the rules look nice, but they don't do much else. Okay, your 4 attacks on 2s. Yes, flurry's great. I'm still not hitting a bunch. We're not talking like an Athati where I have 6 attacks, flurry, and I'm gonna actually just throw weight of dice at you. Okay, they don't have weight of dice. +1 attack characteristics. Okay, in some other turns you get 5 attacks. That's not weight and it's not quality because you don't have any other cool rules with it. Extra defense, going to defense 4 is great. But if that's not the turn that I charged in or got charged, if I'm stuck in any other turns, I'm only on 3s with 4 wounds. You hit me with, you know, 8 attacks or something like that, which is not unheard of for a unit that might want to hit me. And I'm going down at least a stand. On average, I'm going down a stand or more. If you take them in a 3-pack, you're only 12 wounds before you're gone. And your vanguards, you're going to be closer to the enemy. If you want to take them in a 4, maybe even a 5-pack, now you're looking at 200 some points. Yeah, that will help them get their heals. And I know there's a few other ways they can heal. So if you can time it right, you could really say try to keep them around. But it's only every 4 turns that you get that part. And they got to make it through to that part. I did put them in one of my 2 lists because I said, hey, it's models, they're infantry. I want to try to make it work. And specifically, I should say, I did put one of the avatars in. I forget which one. It's on one of the things because they are quite good. They help out a lot. But they just, maybe it's because I haven't tried them out yet. But for the moment, they just feel very lackluster. They feel like they have some potential, but they're kind of spread out what they do. It feels like this is a unit where you're trying to capitalize on the idea of, hey, your rounds have different seasons, and that gives these guys cool, awesome bonuses. That's not going to do enough to make them any good. Um, I only looked at the Discord a little bit because I try not to, not at least until I went fully through what I'm thinking. Because I was trying to look up a rules interaction on something I was unsure of and wanted to see what other people's takes were. And that was one where talking about the Maidens, that it seemed like a lot of people are like, we don't know if they'll do what you want without having to put tons into it. Yeah, if I make a unit 300 plus points, I'm going to do something decent with it no matter what. But I don't want to have to do that. And I shouldn't have to do that to make it worthwhile. So right now, I'm not big on these. I would love to be wrong. I love to find out that there's some sort of interaction, something that I'm missing with some other pieces that really make them glow. Vienna. So the Vienna Cavalry, last unit, take a look at here, other than the avatars. 160 points, 50 year stand. This is a medium cav option. You got a couple cavs, you got some mediums, you got some heavies. I love cav, I love brutes, so it works really well. Move 7, it's got clash 2, volley 2, 5 attacks, 5 wounds. Resolve 3, but 2 defense, 2 evade. They're following the Nord sort of way, but I don't feel they're getting the rest of what the Nords do. I mean, in a way, you are ignoring hindering terrain, so you're getting a lot of your bonuses. A lot of Nord stuff just either has good quality attacks or tons of attacks. They make you pay for that. I don't, in other words, your opponent, you're paying dearly for the ground that you take, or when you take out one of their reasonably easy to take out units, destroy units, that, oh, then they have tons of attacks coming at you or tons of power or something. Not quite there. Opportunist, more than one unit that we've seen with Opportunist. Most of them have been speedier units. So this is definitely feeling like an army where you're going to want to have to try and hit enemies in interesting ways. You just need some chunky pieces to sit in the middle. We have looked at a few of them. So there are some options for that, but you have to kind of play around with that a little bit. They also have Impact 2, but you're on Clash 2, so I don't really care. That's nice, but you're probably not getting many. It's the same court as the Warlord. They have the draw event Prowl. Until the end of the round, the regiment's march characters becomes 5, so slow them down a little bit, and enemies outside of 8 cannot draw a line of sight, so they can't see if you're sitting outside of 8. If an enemy regiment is 8 away or closer, and at any point can draw line of sight to you, you're revealed. This draw event ends immediately. And while prowling, you don't count for the purposes of seizing. That's fair, because otherwise, yes, you would just stand somewhere, auto prowl, and their archers could never tag you. But now at least, yeah, you might not be able to get shot, but you do have to be careful, because if you ever do get close enough, then this goes off. It is at least a draw event. And I said, yeah, you can't use draw event if you're within 8 of an enemy. Although, if an enemy regiment is 8 away or closer, and can at any point draw line of sight. So you can't start it with an 8, but if you were alongside someone or behind them and they never see you, then you're okay. So because you're trying to get to opportunists, because you want to hit them in the side, especially with Clash 2, you need some rerolls. Because even getting to 3, that's not enough when you're only at 5 attacks for your 160 point models here. So a very cool and interesting ability, especially helps, like I said, to get them closer. It is a draw event, so it's not going to help the first round, but just be careful with that. And then after that, or the first round drawn, after that, while you're getting closer, depending on where the enemies are, you could at least make it where you're not going to get shot at. So pounce. If the regiment is revealed during its activation or performs a charge action against an enemy who cannot draw line of sight to it, they gain the terrifying X, where X is the number of seed markers. So you need to use their draw event to get use out of them. So if they're revealed during their activation or they charge, they get some terrifying, assuming you put some seeds on them. This is an army that you're definitely going to have to time out exactly when you do things, because if a bunch of stuff is bloomed, doesn't have seed markers, these are losing their bonuses. We had the Gauglas before who wouldn't get their cleaves and all. So unlike some other armies where, the first action, biggest, craziest thing to go, and then the rest. No, here you might be doing like some archer shots or some other little piddly type things, or not the real slam dunk sort of pieces that you want, because you want the piece set for this. If they can be affected by terrifying, and you can get to the side and all of that, then yeah, then you can do some real work. But otherwise, I don't know. This is a type where I'd have to play it out in practice. For all the games that I play, when I think about it, for all the different armies, I would say you'd get like one use of this, and then not so much. Because like I said, if you get past them, you can't use it while scoring. So you're probably using it on the round or so to get up. Once you're in, hopefully utilizing it well for a turn charge. And then maybe later, if you clear out a spot while you're rushing at their bows, so you can use this so that way they're not getting shot. So good, little finicky, I think, especially set on those twos. If you are spotted, you're not long for this world. So I was trying to get the computer to quiet down a little bit. All right, so that is all of their units. It is a mixed bag for sure. You have some that I think are really stand out, some that I think have potential, and others where I just don't see how they fit well yet, or if they will fit well. So, like I said, got to try it out to be sure. All right, last bit here then is Avatars of the Hunt. So, these are officers, if non-friendly monster regiments, as if it was a character. They don't have their own cards. You can only ever get 3 of them max that you can buy, so you can spend 180 points on these if you want. Unlike officers, it says, hey, they add their own stance to the regiment, and they have their own character profiles. However, being officers, they do not have their own class, march, or wounds. So they'll uptake the number of wounds, but otherwise they have all their own stats. Except for class and march, obviously, but they're in the unit. And you can't go in there if you already have a character. All right. Notice, so non-monster, so you can absolutely put these in with brutes or cav if you want. So let's take a look at what they do. Like I said, they're all 60 points, and they're all of the different courts, and they all are actually very good. These are 60 point, very strong upgrades. So for spring, volley 3, clash 4, 6 attacks, and 4-3-2 for its defense. So resolve defensive aid. I'll just do in that order. Hey, it gets aim shots, so it's essentially falling on 4 with 7 dice at 12 inches, fly and impact 3. And hey, if it's in a regiment, they get a free volley action during their activation, in addition to any others it may have. So you put this in a shooting unit. You could put this in with your Cairn, or you could put this in with whichever of the riders it was. I think is the Cannoneer. Memory serves. And then, hey, once draw events have been resolved, but before the regiment this Wild Hunt is currently attached to performs the first action, get to heal 4. Then you can target up to 4 different aim regiments in 12 and apply seed. So for 60 points, you're getting good quality shots. You're getting some impact or extra impact depending on what you have. You're getting some healing. And you get to put seed markers out. So this is especially good. Which one was it? I have to check now. I'm not good yet at knowing which unit is which, all the different things, because they're just, I mean, they're brand new. So that's not unheard of. Where are they? There they are. No, it's not those ones. Yeah, I was right. It is the Cannoneer riders. They're the ones that shoot. They naturally only have 3 shots each, but aimed as well. Now you're going to add 7 on top of it. So now you're actually really starting to get some damage done. And you're healing up because they're probably going to take some hits because they're going to get a little closer. So absolutely the one of spring. For summer, it is Volley 3, Clash 4, has 7 attacks, 4-3-2. They're all 4-3-2 for their resolve defensive aid. 6 impacts, flurry, and fly. So a lot of attacks, a lot of impact, and flurry on those 4. So reliably getting, almost 7. All right, the regiment this Wild Hunt is currently attached to has the seasonal battlefield role. Sorry, has this seasonal battlefield role in addition to any others. So you give them summer. Was that... Oh yeah, sorry, that's true of all of them though. They always have that rule of you get that season as well. So obviously you want to put them in things that don't match, because then you could get some extra stuff. So wild youth, while it's in there, can't break them. And if it will become broken, give C markers to everyone within 12. This was the spot where I was thinking about the Death Maidens. Summer, at least now, they don't break, because if you break, you can't heal. Yes, I know the other part doesn't help it quite as much necessarily, but that was really useful. And when sea markers bloom within 8 inches, they always bloom if it's summer, regardless of the season. Keep in mind, summer is the one that makes it better for you to charge. So one of my lists that I thought of, I did take some of these. I think I took like a 4-pack with one of those, with the Avatar of Summer, and just thinking, okay, now in spring rounds, sorry, because these guys, they match the Warlord. Well, okay, they count as all of them, I should say. They don't match the Warlord, my apologies. They count as all of them, and depending on whatever round you're in. So now you can get your heals. I don't know if that's worth doing. It will work for sure, but am I just throwing more points at something to try to make a unit good? I don't know. Other spots, I mean, we looked at how you had multiple units that had honestly pretty bad defenses. So not being able to break really helps, especially if you are taking some of those, the healing item, or if you are just looking to charge in general. So you're better if you get into someone, hey, at least this way you get the shot at it. Okay, for Autumn, it has 8 attacks this time, Volley 3, Clash 4. Saves are all the same. Gets Flawless Strikes, Impact 3, and Fly. So lots of attacks, Flawless Strikes, which helps, and that Clash of 4. Actually, are they all Clash 4? I think they're all Clash 4. Clash 4, Clash 4. Yeah, they're all 4s. All Clash 4, Volley 3. So the only thing that changes is the attack profile and the rules. All right, so Autumn, so you can count as Autumn if they're in the unit. Wither Away. Remove 2 seed markers. It's a draw event. Remove 2 seed markers from a target enemy regiment within 12. Move up to 2 seed markers. If you removed 1, they reroll successful morale rolls of 1 until the end of the round. If it's a 2, they reroll morale tests of 1 and 2 until the end of the round. And Prince of Autumn. Oh, my apologies. I did miss it on the spring. All of them have the rule that, hey, if you're within 8, if you bloom their thing. So spring you'll bloom spring, summer you'll bloom summer, autumn you'll bloom autumn. Kind of like autumn the least for its special rules. It is 8 attacks with flawless strikes, with flying and impact. So if you are looking at a unit that just needs a little more punch, because some of these units do need that, they're at 4 to 5 attacks and all. Hey, this gives you for 60 points, which might be the same cost as an extra stand. It might be giving you a lot more ability than that extra stand. The reroll and the morale, depending on the list you're going against. If you're going against something that does morale, so you're against Old Dominion, is garbage. But otherwise, rather good. But just for some reason, it doesn't inspire me as much as some of the other ones do. It doesn't feel as. The other ones feel like their rules matter much, much more. Here's the other thing: is the draw event, you do have to remove seed markers. So you are essentially slowing down a mechanic of yourself to get this bonus. And it is on one unit. So definitely some play for it there, but with at least one that I'm excited about. And for winter, Clash 3, the Volley 4, sorry, Volley 3, Clash 4, 5 attacks. This one has Impact 4, Brutal Impact 2, and Cleave 2. So least amount of attacks, but does have Cleave. And actually has Brutal. So Inevitable End. When the regiment this Wild Hunt is currently attached to destroys an enemy regiment with a bloom effect on it. So timing matters. All other enemy regiments with an 8 take 2 wounds for each seed marker on them. And then no morale on those. And then Prince of Winter, obviously, hey, if they bloom nearby within 8 inches, they bloom as winter. That's the one that gives you dread, but your unit has to be touching them first. So it's strong, but it's very timing based. All right, I am back after having made some very nice looking bread. Pumpkin spice bread, actually. Okay, so for winter, the, the seeds counting as winter can be hit and miss. But if you destroy someone who has a bloom effect on them, you're doing wounds to other people around. That's a pretty good effect. And this thing, the Wild Hunt of Winter, actually does some damage. I said not as many of attacks, but good impact. And on Clash 4, that's a very good conversion rate. At Brutal 2, and then just Cleave 2. So the only restriction is you can't take more than 3 of these. They can't go on a monster, which is fine. And they can't go in a unit that already has a character. But otherwise, you're kind of free to do what you want. I will admit, I haven't played around enough in my list building a thought process of where exactly I want to put them. I'd want to put them somewhere where either they, okay, so this one, the one for winter, you could put it somewhere to shore up a weakness in a unit. Because let's face it, some of your units have a weakness. Other option, though, is to put it in, let's say, I have to go to my pronunciation sheet, Givra, your Givra Knights or something like that, who are already doing very good work, but now I can help for maybe cheaper, help ensure that I actually beat the unit that I'm hitting, and then I do some damage around. So I think those are the considerations. The second one, maybe it feels like a little bit more like a win more, but I do feel this army has the problem of your units are either super, like, not survivable or good survivable. Some are quite good. In general, that's sort of the two sides of the piece. So, your units that have like 2 defense, stuff like that, you're going to put them in there. I don't know, might not give them enough. They might not be able to stick around long enough. So, like, just randomly looking at this, we went, kind of scroll through for the Kron Guardians. All right, well, hey, they're naturally Clash 2 on those 5 attacks. The saves are okay enough. They have the shields, but they get that relentless blow, the unstoppable. Okay, hey, so they'll get in, but they're only normally on 2s. They'll get the 3s. Not the biggest thing, and they apply some seeds out, which is good. Okay, well, maybe I put in winter in there to give them that extra bit of punch, an extra, 4 or 5 attacks, some impact. So I'm putting 4 to 5, uh, cleave 2 style wounds into someone, so that we can do a little bit more. give them some option to blast out some damage. Those sort of thoughts. So I haven't gone through enough of each unit because it's going to take some time, but go through the different units and think about what could these do. I do think if you're just running an MSU style, taking these guys does help shore up those a bit, but otherwise I might want to put them in a unit that has at least one extra stand, so that way I get a little something more out of them. And do they all fly? Yes, all of them fly. So you're covered there if you happen to go into a unit that flies as well. You're not going to lose anything for that. Obviously, some of them, okay, like spring shoots, put it in a shooting unit because otherwise you're wasting that. You know, winter goes into a unit that wants to charge impact and ideally has some impact itself to really capitalize on it. But all right. So that is all the units, that is all the bits, that is everything there put together. Hopefully this was informative and all. Maybe I'll just show quickly the list I put together and then do some more detail of it at another point. All right, let's very quickly look at this then. All right, 4 lists. Oh, this one I called second. Okay, this was list 1. So you'll notice for both of these 2 lists that I put together, I went with very similar characters. I mean, you don't have a whole lot of choice to whether or not take like a Rune C or a War C. So for my first list, I went with Rune C, unit of Current Skirmishers. This one particularly, I put him on the Coil Drake or Coil Dragon. So essentially, he's going to ride on top of that. Galaglass Warriors, of course, and the Key and Near, the Key and Near Riders. So some shooting to help deal with that. He's standing on top of Coil Drake, some more shooting. So really trying to put some markers out, and that way it does that for my other units. So I did take a little 3-pack of the Maidens. A lot of Maidens, mostly because I don't know. I will say, I'm not saying this list is like super competitive or great or wondrous. Like, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to put lists together. What actually my particular thought with this list was, what is either out or have we seen? So there's a better shot that we will get it somewhat soon. So I made sure this fit a starter set, some of the units that are out. Hey, the Coal Dragon, we've seen him. So he's probably coming in not too distant future. So I made sure one of those was in. That's why it's got the 2 units of skirmishers. The other one for the Tawashi. The Kron Guardians. Because, hey, they're in that box. But for other units, I did put a Wild Hunt in. Because I think that's great. The Law Maidens, I don't know. They were 130 points. They're cheap. I didn't want to put even more like skirmishers or something else. And I'm still not sure about the Will-O-Wisps. I don't want more light. So I wanted something medium. Because if you notice, we got a couple heavies already. So I want a few more mediums. I only have the 2 lights, which is good. I got extra mediums. Got a few heavies to come in late. The thought for this particular list, I put any upgrades. Obviously, he had to take Rider. Nothing. And okay, yeah. The Taosi went with Warlord because raining season. All right, hey, if it's the right time, Vanguard. I'm gonna start on Autumn, but hey, the current skirmishers are then Autumn, so they get a little extra move. If you look at some of these other units, especially the ones that count as any season, like the Coil Dragon, then that means that I can always get that extra 3 and all. I thought that was actually pretty strong. And then if you've done that planting an ambush on them that they bloom, it applies any seeds, hey, it makes them bloom. Well, I have multiple units that shoot, which one of those particular does look at the current skirmishers. I have 2 of them. In fact, he's going to be standing in one of them. So I can always apply it to him, could always apply it to the other unit as well. He is in that first turn. That special rule. Oh, and it is at the end. Oh, so you won't be able to do it first turn because you essentially have to be able to target distance, so you should be on the board first. Starting turn 2, I can make sure they have it, so I can actually start getting this stuff into them. So I thought he made a good Warlord. My other list that I put together went with the Warshi instead. Another unit of current skirmishers. For this one, though, I did give reinvigoration. That is the way to heal. Once a round after they bloomed, one any other bloom on it. Hey, within 12, heal 2. So I thought a nice little healing bubble. Again, I went with the Pioneer Riders. Just kind of like them a little bit better personally. That's my current thought. I did take the Skaha Hunters. So we talked about how reasonably good they were, but not very defensive. The potential heals help. Classical Warriors, I don't imagine not bringing a set of those. This one, I didn't want to go pure like MSU, so the current skirmishers, this one went up to 4. The Black Maidens went to 4, and in particular for these ones, they take the Summer. That's the one that keeps them from breaking. So goes in. Oh no, actually can't. Oh, no, just noticed that can't because the character has to go there. Or yeah, I didn't give the character anything else special. So yep, I'd actually have to change it around then. Okay, could go somewhere else. What else can she take? What else would I will say, like, because that's something I just thought of now. If you want, like, the Law Maidens to have one of those, you need something else for your character to go in. Which, since the crown was cavalry there, and the Taoisi, as you can see, I made cavalry, and I can't do it that way. So, like, what else is going? I guess just more current skirmishers? I don't know. I didn't realize. Okay, so I grabbed the Wild Hunt. Sorry, Wild Hunter of Winter. Sorry, of Summer. So you know what? Oh, let's make it Winter, and then I'll put it in with the uh Gevra Knights. Maybe, like I said, just guarantee I get through, or Fina Knights. Sorry, Fina Cav, because you have the opportunity, you have all that, and you have something extra just to make sure they get something done. Because otherwise, these guys are only on 2s. Now I'm on something really good. So, and then the Taoisi can go. He's a Gemred lore, or I should try to pronounce them correctly. Gevra lord. So he can go with the Gevra Knights, or even with the other unit, depending on just which way you want to go with that. And yeah, took Revigation, took that. This time around, I went with the Caster as the Warlord, because hey, crop rotation. I figured for starting out, that would actually be a really good thing of, oh, the seed markers aren't where I want them to be. Okay, I can get the bloom effects where I need them. And then I can just choose the season I want to get to. And again, that's really useful because, with what I'd done, I really need it to be blank season because I didn't time it well of when something happens. Just make it that season. I will admit, I went through, made these lists. I don't know if I like them or not. I'm gonna have to go through them multiple times. I do want to, like I said, just gonna try them out, see what I think, and that's when I feel I'll get it better. A lot of people, I will say, so that's gonna kind of end the discussion on that. A lot of people, I would say, were talking about when you looked at Ironi, how tough they were to figure out, sort of unuser friendly. These guys are worse, for sure. Because Uroni, once you get the fact that, hey, you can go in 2s or larger, if you don't intermix, you have your command rule. Try to have this card. You don't care if you don't get the card. They have that part a little bit. Because hey, if it's not the right season, you don't necessarily have certain bonuses and all. And really more of matters in terms of what sort of bloom effects you're gonna get. But it's like that to a much higher degree, because since you can't just randomly choose who you want to go, you have to have picked them in the right order to put the correct token, the correct seed markers on people, potentially blooming them in the middle of a turn based off of the rules that you have, to be able to get the bonuses you want for the timing of all these different units. Oh, I want you to have seed markers so this unit can eat them up to do this effect. Okay, well, I have to make sure these other units go first for this one. And who's actually going to bloom? Can I make sure that they don't do it at that point? Because I do want those markers around and all of that. That is why I do kind of like the Shanahasi, because I said we talked about that rotation. It's at the end of the round, so before things would bloom, you can gather them all up and redistribute them. So you could then, with this one, guarantee that, oh, I don't want them to bloom. I'll make sure they only have one marker. This other one, I don't care. They'll take the two. I would say for ease of play, can you just play it and not worry about half of that? Sure. Will they perform well? No. Because you need to be using your army rules to get something out of the army. I would put them at least for the moment, without having actually sat down and done it, went through all of this and everything. I'd put them at the high end of the learning curve currently, especially because like with units that just take the role of your leader or take all roles, I'm gonna want reminders next to them. I'm gonna have to like print out little things so that way I can remember which one does this one want and what does it care about, especially like is it getting different bonuses? The point is it getting anything at those. In reality, some of it you don't necessarily get so much from it, but other bits you do. So you kind of do need to know. Um, so I would put them currently as one of the harder to get factions. You know, there might be other ones that are more challenging, but I think these guys are up there right now. So if you're very new to the game, hopefully this wasn't too rough to go through. But if you're very new to the game, just get out there and have fun. Don't worry about half of it. If things aren't working right, they're not working right. At least ignoring hindering terrain makes it easier because then you also don't have the concern of, am I positioning myself well? I'm just, I'm here. I'll stand behind a tree. I'll stand in a forest. It's all good. All right, well, that will do it for this. This was a bit of a marathon. It was recorded over actually almost like 3 days at this point, mostly just because I didn't have this amount of time free. There will be some timestamps, as you've hopefully have noticed and all. Cut back to any point you want. If you've noticed anything or have any thoughts, share them in the comments below. Let me know, especially if you think something, I missed something. Maybe there's some cool trick or something we can do that I just didn't quite see. After this, now I'm going to start looking at the Discord and seeing what sort of thoughts people had. But again, I usually try to avoid that when I'm going to review something because I don't want that coloring my impression as much. And hoping maybe in about another week to test some of this out. So I'll get some proxy stuff together and maybe try some stuff out and see what I think. All right, well, I've talked for more than long enough over multiple days for this. On behalf of everyone here at the show, then, has a good hobby. It's a great gaming.